so eager to laugh, so devoted to family. I gotta start this over.
Okay.
Young Cosner.
Yeah, you were fine.
They were people so eager to laugh, so devoted to family, so dedicated to each other. The only word that came to mind is podcast.
Mm-hmm. What's the reading replace?
Harmony.
Good writing.
I can't tell in advance if this is one of those episodes where everyone's going to get mad at us.
Oh boy, what a way to kick off.
But here's a hot take right off the
This
top.
had an Academy Award winning screenplay.
Yep.
Carry on.
Do you know this won the Academy Award for Best
That
Picture?
I knew. That one I can actually explain more than best screenplay, but go ahead.
We'll talk about this. We'll talk about all this. I think, and excuse me if this is a take that people have been throwing around for years that I've just missed, or I'm standing alone on a ledge here. This movie's improved if you cut all the fucking voiceover out.
The voiceover is not helping anything.
And I'm not one of these people who always thinks voiceover is like fucking lazy crutch. By no means. I think, in particular, I think the writing in this movie is never worse than in the voiceover. And I think the voiceover plays to all of Costner's weaknesses as an actor. Whereas the rest of the movie is mostly designed around his strengths.
Sure.
Every time they go to the voiceover, I'm like, I would be fucking angry thinking about Goodfellas losing to this in 1990. Goodfellas, a movie that uses voiceover as well as any movie ever.
It's a great point.
The divide
they
between
went
those
up
two.
against each other. It's true. That one of the best voiceover narration jobs of all time versus a really pitiful one.
Used well, well written, well performed.
This movie also drops the voiceover. And whenever you drop the voiceover midway into your movie, that also suggests to me that you never should have had it.
But then it'll be gone for 20 minutes and it'll come back, and every time it comes back, you're like, oh, fuck. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, does Cosner trust himself that, like, because it feels like often he does. He is sort of historically an actor who's like, cut down the dialogue. I can convey this with a look. That's a lot of his power as a movie star and as a storyteller. And there will be sequences where he'll look at something, you'll be like, it's all there on his face. And then Costner goes, in that moment, I was thinking, I liked these people.
And it's not built around his journals.
No,
right?
Like loosely.
It's not like someone later finds the journals and is like, oh, these are good.
Yeah.
Like
Useful.
he maybe does that once
He
where the
journals a little
voiceover
bit.
is like coinciding with like him writing in his journal.
Yeah, he's got a journal, but you're right. It's not over the like, it's not like he's doing a captain's log at the end of every day.
What's this podcast?
This is Blank Check with Griffin and David. I'm Griffin.
I'm David.
It's a podcast about filmographies.
I am David.
Yeah, you guys could you redo it as if you're writing in your...
It's a podcast about filmographies. Directors who have massive success early on in their careers and are given a series of blank checks, make whatever crazy passion projects they want. And sometimes those checks clear and sometimes they bounce, baby. That's kind of the energy of his voiceovers. I'm not saying I have the voice right.
A little low energy.
Yeah.
It's stoic.
But talk about a fucking crazy hit right out of the gate. They said it couldn't be done. Everyone doubted this guy. He makes this movie. It makes fucking $400 million worldwide and wins Best Picture. We're talking about Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner.
We're talking about the Cos, a man who this year is beginning his four-pronged...
Yes, is riding right off a cliff into either Valhalla or the pit.
Yeah.
The pit of debt.
Yes. It's one of the big stories of film this year. Coppola and Costner, the two guys who are opening up their own fucking checkbook. The check is blank, but it's tied to their own fucking personal funds and are making the crazy passion projects that no one else will let get made. The only other time we've covered someone who's done something like that is George Lucas.
Sure.
Right? Like
Lucas counts. Shyamalan counts a little bit on a smaller scale.
You're right, on a smaller scale.
These are all guys who essentially write their own checks against themselves in a way. Now, someone like Coppola is not like, I need this to clear. He's more like, this is what I'm going to make, near the end of my life with all my money. Shyamalan is like, my movies are kind of designed to make a profit by opening weekend. Costner's kind of in the middle where he's like, look, my kids end up broke. Okay.
That's the thing.
I don't want them to.
Right.
He's yes, no.
Costner's made it clear he's got he's got a reasonable amount of exposure.
He's got money on the line. He's rich.
Is he like?
I don't think he's gonna like join Cameo if these movies don't do well. But like, he's got money on the line.
He's got a lot of money on the line. He's not totally wiped out, but this isn't a fucking parking ticket for him.
We're talking about Kevin Costner. He's an actor, writer, director, producer. Ben Hosley, our producer.
Kevin Costner is an American movie star.
He's an American multi-hyphenate movie star.
Yeah.
He's a musician too, David.
He is.
What are they called again? The Lonesome Crowded West? That's a Modest Mouse song.
KC in the Modern West.
There you go.
Yeah. But I look at the first line of his Wikipedia is Kevin Michael Costner is an American actor, producer, and director. Correct. Now, usually when they list what someone's nationality is, you're just like, that's just getting information out. But you're like,
American.
No, he's definitively an American actor, producer, and director.
Kevin Costner, we are covering his career. Yes, because he has a new film out this year that is a classic, crazy, wild blank check swing. But he has been someone we've always discussed because whenever Kevin went behind the camera, there were three options: huge hit, giant flop, or subtle, low-key masterpiece that actually did pretty well. Open Range just sort of defies the thing.
What's wild. It's like right.
Huge hit, huge flop. Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Constrained.
On base double that over 20 years has aged into being like a secret masterpiece.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. But it is the variance of those three movies and their reputations and the responses they got at the time. And I also say to some degree the films themselves is just kind of like a perfect three, which always felt a little short to do.
Yes, right. Just doing three Costner movies, maybe Patreon, always felt a little weak. But now there's Horizon and American Saga on the horizon.
Perfectly timed to this series.
Yes.
The day that I fucking beautiful minded our spreadsheet.
He's so proud of this. So, because I was like, we should do Costner. He's got these movies coming out. And you were like, I don't like how it looks.
Well,
then you slotted in some other guys.
Well, let me just say this.
I don't know what he's about to say.
David's pitch was...
Where did you get that chalkboard?
David's pitch was we go right from McTiernan. No, I'm sorry. Right from Satoshi Kon into Costner. And that would have meant we cover three Costner movies.
Right. And
then 3 weeks later, we do one Horizon.
It's not like I was like, I'm putting my career on the line for this idea. I was more like, we should do Costner.
I was like, this is the sloppiest shit I've ever seen.
We put breast in between, it
I
looks better. I
beautiful-minded it. And then it was like, oh, we could start the series
right. Beautiful-minded it. That's about a mentally ill man. He's not doing well. It's not good. Paul Bettany isn't real.
Underline the difference here. Nothing you said makes me change the way I just described what happened.
Oh boy.
Mentally ill man who is not doing well prides himself on figuring out one good calculation. This is a miniseries on the films of Kevin Costner.
We are doing a miniseries on the films of Kevin Costner, the 5 films he's directed, plus Waterworld on Patreon, which he didn't direct, but he kind of directed. What's it called?
I wish we could have figured out a way to put Robin Hood in there, but the timing got...
Robin Hood isn't...
It's not the same.
Interesting. Like, Robin Hood is like an okay movie. Like, Waterworld, it's everything we're talking about with Kevin Costner.
His 90s are very similar to Ben Affleck's 2010s, where it's like, oh my God, you've just proven yourself as a serious filmmaker. So you're going to keep making serious films, right?
Right.
And he's like vacillating between like, what do I want to say versus do I just want to be a movie star? But even when I'm a movie star, how much control can I possibly cede? And I think Affleck was a guy who in that period was like, maybe I just want to be like Batman for hire.
Or, yeah, well...
And not being in control.
I'm now just convinced he can't experience joy. Because whenever Ben Affleck achieves more success, it just kind of feels like he's like, great, how do I get the wheels off of this car while it's in motion?
Which is what's, I would argue, interesting about him.
Yeah, totally. Well, but that's not also, the man we're discussing
now.
Though.
I feel like he has come to terms with that. Like, he's like, I'm not looking for the magic solve when he does interviews.
I don't believe him. I don't believe him. He tricked me
with
his good interviews.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, no, wait a second. You're just doing what you did last time again.
Possibly.
And you're going to be fucking Professor X all of a sudden. And I won't have even seen it coming. Like, you're going to do it again.
Costner on the flip side is a guy who almost seems to feel like he's never failed. Like, in his own perception, they just released, at the time we're recording this, his like timeline of my career video. in the wind up for Horizon came out.
He's doing press all of a
I watched it
sudden
last
because
night.
He's got a movie coming.
Great fucking 20. Because as we'll cover in later episodes, he says, "I don't talk to the press unless I got a picture to sell."
And then he opens the bottle. Yeah.
And he's so self-mythologizing in a way where you're just like, who fucking talks like this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's kind of beautiful that everything he says is presented in like sort of mythic terms. But in that timeline of my career video, they talk about Wyatt Earp, which is one of his biggest flops.
Certainly.
And
a man who's made a lot of flops.
Yeah. And he like frames it as like, it was a shame the like sort of space race we got into with Tombstone. And like Tombstone's a fun picture, but it was just sort of not fair for us to be compared that way. And the way he keeps talking about it, he keeps framing it as if he made the better movie that everyone agrees won.
Right.
And it was unfair to Tombstone to be compared to Wyatt Earp. And it's like, my man, no one liked Wyatt Earp at the time and people haven't come around to it.
Yeah, exactly. Just still sucks.
This guy who is like so earnest in everything he does, but also like so focused, so bullheaded. And sometimes he is wildly right. And sometimes he's wildly wrong.
When he connects, he truly connects with audiences, and he matters a lot, in the history of movies.
Yeah.
Sort of Hollywood movies or whatever. And then every time people are kind of like, okay, wow, it's enough with Cosner. He does something like Yellowstone or whatever, where he's truly back, at least with a portion of people, white people is who I'm referring to there. No, just, it's like his particular kind of star gravitas is somewhat unique and does resonate. And we've written it off many times, and it might be time to write him off again.
We'll see.
Like, it might be time. This
see.
Might be us writing him off again, but he is, he is someone I think about more than I think I thought I would when I was younger. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, I do think he is someone who just kind of needs to be reckoned with many times in many ways.
Is it hot in here?
A little bit.
Custer's overwhelming me already.
1990, he makes a film called Dances with Wolves.
What's we're called Podcast with Wolves?
Podcast with Wolves is the name of this miniseries. Ben, of course, he's made it clear this isn't fully a new phase.
No.
He's just wearing a neckerchief. Little bandana.
It felt right.
A bandana.
Well,
okay.
I love that.
Okay.
But just a little jaunty handkerchief that I've tied around my neck.
Ben?
Yes.
What was your relationship to Costner growing up? Because I would argue, from a certain vantage point, there is a solid corner of the Costner canon that is like Black Label porch movie. High
Black
thread
Label.
count porch movie.
Like you're saying, like elevated.
Yeah, like what he was best at is something like Field of Dreams, where you're like, that movie is like high populist art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That movie plays on a porch. It plays at the American Cinematheque. Like that movie just, it has that sort of, as you said, David, when he hit, it was like he really tapped into like something primal in the culture that has like stuck.
Yeah, but also, and this sort of thing where you're like, I thought that was old news. And he's like, it's new news again. And you're like, I guess it is. I mean, okay, Dance of the Wolves, the Western is back and whatever, like Yellowstone.
Field of Dreams, definitely watched on a porch.
Yeah.
Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Watched on a porch.
Sure.
Here's the thing, though. Not a memorable movie, Robin Hood.
No. I mean, Alan Rickman is sort of the memorable
but
part, right?
It did give us Robin Hood Men in Tights,
right.
which for me is a huge movie.
I feel like for people who are like 6 or 7 years older than us, Robin Hood is like humongous, even if they don't love it.
It was just a huge movie. It had the huge song. It had, it had
such
Rickman.
A fucking cultural moment.
What's the song?
Everything
I do for you.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, that's the love theme from Robin Hood. Prince of
Thieves, the Kevin Reynolds film.
It's so funny how there's songs like that are just so like part of culture And then you find out it was made for a fucking Robin Hood movie.
Well, but that's the thing with Costner.
Who Let the Dogs Out is from Rugrats in Paris, the movie.
Well, we all know that.
We all know that.
But here's one thing we don't know.
Who let the dogs out?
Who was it?
That's why I went to the theater. I said, I'm praying for answers, and they gave me none.
I guess this is a good time to announce I'm launching a true crime podcast, trying to get to the bottom of whom
let the dogs out.
This is a podcast about America. You know, all those podcasts are always like, this is a podcast about justice.
You know what? Serial is kind of like Kevin Costner. And then I keep thinking it's done. They did their first season in 6 years. It's fucking top of the charts again. I don't know a single person who's listened to one episode.
Do I? What's it about?
Much like Yellowstone. What's it about? Is it about Guantanamo Bay?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Guantanamo.
I was really worried about being wrong there.
Yeah. Caning is back. What's her pant? Caning. Sarah? Caning?
Sarah.
That's her name?
Yeah.
This is a podcast about dogs. Who let them out? Who? I remember.
I think that's sustainable for, 12 to 24 episodes.
Someone playing it when I was in like the 5th grade at my school. And
Playing Who Let the Dogs Out.
Yeah, and everyone going who in unison. And my mom was there. It must have been like some fair at school or something. I don't know. Like, and she's just witnessing like, and just like, what the hell is going on? It was a great moment. We were all loving it. Who let the dogs? What are the Baja Men doing right now?
Great question.
So Kevin Costner, we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about his films he's directed: Dances with Wolves, The Postman, Open Range, Horizon and American Saga Part 1. We will do Waterworld on Patreon. We will not be talking about some of the best films he was ever in. Bull Durham, The Untouchables. What else? The Bodyguard, not a great film, but a big hit. JFK.
I mean,
No Way Out, incredible movie.
We're going to crack open the
Tin
dossier.
Cup, Bill and David Sims.
But yes, it's like between Dances with Wolves,
obviously Field of Dreams,
and The Postman, he has his last batch of like home runs with the start of the decline. But leading up to Dances with Wolves, he just has a pretty absurd run.
We will talk about that, but first we should talk about his history as a man walking on this earth. And his name is Kevin Costner. And he's born January 18th, 1955 in Linwood, California. And his dad was an electrician who became an executive at Pacific Bell. It's a telephone company. Now, his family's Irish and German descent. Supposedly, they were always moving around California. Went to 4 high schools. That's crazy. It was only 4 years of high school.
Yeah.
So he went to 4 high schools in 4 years.
You often hear a lot of actors or comedians, that is their background, where they're like, there's something about needing to learn how to ingratiate yourself in a new environment over and over and over again. Have you noticed this?
Yeah. No, I mean,
there is a through line where it's like with a lot of performers where they're like, my family, my dad, I was an army brat. Right. We kept on moving. Every year I had to make new friends.
So Kevin Costner, what does he say he was interested in? According to a Time profile in 1999, family, sports, conflict, movies. Great heroism, great love stories sent chills down my spine. I was particularly intrigued by dilemmas. What? I was intrigued by making out and hanging out with my friends. Not dilemmas.
This is the fucking thing with Costner.
Yeah. A dilemma is wanting to kiss a woman and not doing it. Once you do it, it's action. Action is fine. I understand what it's about, but you have to understand where it comes from. This guy just talks like this.
We should acknowledge
that this guy just talks like this.
Yes. I, of course, worked on the movie Draft Day with him. He does just fucking talk like this all the time. And it is incredibly sincere.
Like, I was reading Zach Baron's profile of him in GQ.
I want to like call out this with line.
Jealousy about it.
Yes.
And then I'm like, right, but he just talks in this highfalutin, ridiculous way the entire time. He's just loading you up with these quotes. What do you want to highlight?
The London-bred Sienna Miller, one of the stars of Horizon, told me that when she got cast in the part, Costner told her, I will show you an America you have only dreamed of. When I asked her if Costner always spoke that way, she responded, yes, that is how he talks. Have you not spent time with him?
And like Sienna Miller, it's like, sure, she's English, but she's been to America.
Yeah.
But maybe she hasn't seen the horizon.
But also, when I read, I will show you an America you have only dreamed of, and imagine Costner whispering that to me, I get goosebumps.
He's good at that kind of stuff. Now, he likes sports. Obviously, Costner makes a lot of sports movies over his career, which we're not going to talk about.
Nope. But you know what? I put it down on a fucking brainstorm list. Costner sports movies.
Yeah. So
it has
Field of Dreams,
huge
Tin Cup,
future Patreon series potential.
Is there another? Well,
Draft Day? I think there's
Draft Day. And then we don't do For
Love
of the Game. We don't need to do that again.
No.
But then maybe we do a special episode where we play baseball.
Okay. Just the three of us? I don't think so.
Do you think that would be engaging audio?
Is McFarland USA a sports movie?
Yeah, which is good, by the way.
I know you like that movie.
Nicky Caro.
Anyway.
You saying we play baseball gives me the exact opposite physiological response to imagining Costner saying, I will show you in America. My shoulders like locked up.
Sports, beside the obvious competitive aspect, is about sharing and being fair. I've always liked to roll in the dirt. That's what Costner says.
When he was young, he was like primarily a sports-minded kid, athlete. But David, he was very short.
He was 5'2" as a sophomore. I'm 6'1" now, but I still relate to those feelings. I didn't date in high school and didn't get my growth until college. I never got over being short, he says.
I do think that's a little bit of a key for him.
So he really wanted to play sports and tried, and I think played baseball in college, but was not really an athlete. But he was always performance-oriented, he said. He did sing in an all-boys choir. That's when I realized I could manipulate audiences. Yeah, Jesus Christ. And didn't really consider acting until college at Cal State Fullerton. Bored in one of his accounting classes, he read his college newspaper and saw a casting call notice for Rumpelstiltskin. And he asked his friends, like, does Robert Carlyle go to this school? And they said, no. And he's like, great, then I have a shot.
Yeah, you could squeeze like 10 seasons out of this thing.
Didn't get the role.
Mm-hmm.
What if next Costner announces, like, I'm making my Rumpelstiltskin movie. I'll show them.
But he was sort of saying, like, I psychologically still thought of myself as a Rumpelstiltskin, even though I'd had the growth spurt at that point.
He probably didn't make a ton of sense for Rumpelstiltskin.
I was now handsome enough to play the prince, but I didn't have the tools. It's such a good Costner line.
Yes. So suddenly he's bitten by the acting bug. Starts going to the South Coast Actors Co-op.
But being bitten by the bug is him being like, fuck, I've just been told I don't know how to do this.
Right.
I walked in here, assumed I could charm my way through and just have the right look. And they were like, you have no craft. Now I want to prove myself.
Yes. He marries his girlfriend, Cindy Silva, in college. Flying back from his honeymoon from her in Mexico, he finds Richard Burton in First Class, the famous drunk actor.
Sitting alone because he had bought out all the other seats so no one could bother him.
Yes. He asks him for advice, then impatiently waits as Burton was like, can I finish my book first?
I just want to paint this picture. Richard Burton, alone in First Class.
Right. Probably giving a fuck off vibe.
Right.
Yes.
Costner asked probably, why is no one else in First Class? He bought all the seats because he doesn't want anyone talking to him. Costner sits there. He's like, I should talk to him.
Hey, can you tell me how to be an actor?
Goes up to him. Is like, can you tell me how to be an actor? Richard Burton is like, let me finish my book. Costner just sits there for like however fucking many minutes while Richard Burton finishes his book. And it's like he passes the test and Richard Burton looks up and is like, here's everything.
He's not. Let me tell you exactly what Richard Burton said.
He says that there's a lot of the conversation that he has still never shared with him.
That's all.
Costner's a big fucking lockbox. Like, there was a thing that was said that I'll never repeat.
What he says is that he did ask Richard Burton, I did want you to know just the drama of your life. You're a brawler. You've had marriages and a lot of things. Does that drama follow you as an actor? I want to have a life that's not filled with drama. And Burton looked at me and he said, you have green eyes. I have green eyes. I think you'll be fine. Good shit. Again, this is all Costner, the mythmaker, talking. So I have no idea. Richard Burton was probably like, can I drink you? And tried to pick him up and put Costner in his mouth. It was like,
but also, if you're Richard Burton and young Kevin Costner comes up to you on a plane, do you not go like, this guy's got some movie star energy?
Some fella, probably. I mean,
this isn't some squirrely nerd coming up to me being like, I'm going to be an actor. And he's like, Griffin Newman, go back to your seat.
Yeah, he looks like a good looking guy. I mean, he looks like young Kevin Costner. He's all right.
I'd say pretty fucking good.
Costner starts working as a stage manager.
Let's also mention the fucking end of the Richard Burton story.
What? That he says good luck from a limousine window? I'm moving on. This is a long dossier. It's all made up. He made all that up. None of that ever happened. I'm calling you. Costner, you want to disprove me?
This is the attitude you're starting a Costner series with?
Yes. What's this? What am I pointing to, Griffin?
The chair?
Yeah. You want to disprove it?
You're doing a Clint with fucking imaginary Costner in that chair?
Join us. Rebut me.
Oh, boy.
Come sit in the chair, Costner.
Wow.
Chair's open for you, buddy. I don't think Richard Burton said 2 words to you.
Costner, do you like a fire walk with me?
Maybe he does.
Lord Palmer is a tragic sadness.
It's about America.
The sadness of America.
He likes coffee. Maybe
Costner?
Probably.
He didn't list it as one of his favorite things.
Did he drink coffee? You were getting him coffee in draft day.
This is
before you spilled it. Deleted scene. Does he? Yeah. Do you drink coffee?
You know why they cut the scene out of the movie?
Why?
Because I was supposed to keep the coffee upright.
Right. That was the issue.
I fucked it up so badly they had to cut it out.
Costner, in the morning, you're crafty, drinking mud. You know.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Costner,
and he makes coffee in this movie. Coffee is a thing in this movie.
Yeah. That's a real like on the plains thing, right? Yeah. Okay. He starts working as stage manager. He does two little film appearances: Sizzle Beach, USA, and Chasing Dreams. I think those are both dumb movies.
Enrolled in a program to learn film budgeting so he could start getting on-set jobs. He just wanted to be close to productions. And then that leads to him sort of similar to like the Bill Paxton ending up on front of camera on Corman movies through starting out in the art department or whatever. It's a similar sort of arc. And he does these sort of
does a few
undistinguished, low budget. Well, that's him getting tiny roles in better movies.
Francis, which he gets his SAG card for. He stars in a film called Stacy's Nights, directed by Jim Wilson. I assume you have not seen Stacy's Nights.
No, but it is written by...
it is written by Michael Blake, who
it ends up
get to later.
Being one of the most impactful movies of his career, even though this movie...
Forgotten. It's like a gambling movie. It's like about a blackjack. I don't know.
Yeah. It's like a casino comedy, I think.
In 1983, he's supposed to get his big break and is cut out of The Big Chill. Only his forehead and his hairline are in the film, famously. He plays the dead guy. But there's supposed to be a big scene at the end of the movie where you see him. And then Larry Kasdan, who made the movie, was like, it disrupts the energy of the film. Like, it's no good.
Right. Whole movie's about him.
We've never seen this scene.
It is like a generational cast. Is it still not in the Criterion
Never.
disc? Wow. But the kind of thing that breaks a lot of people. Right? Like, here was my big break and I was cut out of it and they never get over it. He shows in this timeline my career video. He was like, my friends were telling me the second I got that part, I should start doing press because the movie's going to blow me up. And it's like, let's see what this thing is.
Right.
Like, he was very sort of big picture about everything. He was always managing his career in like a very big picture way. But the other part of it was everyone was like, oh God, this must be such a brutal blow to get cut out of it. And he's like, I got to fucking be on that set with all those people. Like, that was the win. I was on a top tier movie. I worked with Kasdan. I held my own with him. Even if he cut me out, that was the gain, which did end up.
Well, so a bunch of things happen. One, he makes a little film about selling tickets to customers called Fandango, directed by Kevin Reynolds. No, it's actually a sort of like a comedy road trip movie.
It's like
I've never
a brown
seen
paper
Fandango.
bag comedy with like googly
Judd
eyes
Nelson.
glued on the top of the brown paper bag. I'm still making the Fandango joke.
Remember those guys?
Bring them back.
Bring them back, because Fandango is better than ever. Fucking load Fandango and it's like 18 pop-ups. Like,
he makes this dudes being dudes road trip comedy. That's like pretty good. I've seen it. Have you seen Fandango?
No, I've never seen it. That's what I'm saying. It's Kevin Reynolds, who obviously would direct him in other movies.
So it's like this very just character-driven thing.
Yeah.
But when Costner blows up and he doesn't want to direct a movie himself, Reynolds is the guy he hires. So Reynolds does Robin Hood, Waterworld, and the Hatfields and McCoys miniseries. And every time they work together, it ends with them hating each other and shit-talking each other in the press and being like, I'm never going to fucking work with that guy again. And then they'll come back together.
The weirdest thing is that...
But it all starts in this movie that is like as far off from the movies I just described as you could imagine.
Best movie Kevin Reynolds ever made didn't have Kevin Costner in it.
Which is?
Count of Monte Cristo. That movie is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, but he's a totally okay, like, kind of straight down the middle action sort of adventure filmmaker. Anyway, after He gets cut out of the big chill. Larry Kasdan feels bad, puts him in Silverado. Now, Silverado isn't like a huge
two
hit,
relationships, like Reynolds and fucking Kasdan, he's going to be working with for decades.
Silverado, not a huge hit, but he's good in it, and like he's cute and fun in it. Like it's like he's a face, right?
Well, he's, as he describes it, he's like the wild young guy full of juice, right? And Costner tells the story, once again, self-mythologizing, but that when he's at the beginning of wanting to pursue acting, he goes to see a Western movie with his father. I don't know what it was. And his father turns to him and says, like, you could do this kind of thing. And Costner's like, I belong here. I should be making Westerns, even when they're out of vogue, right? In his mind, he's working towards being the Gary Cooper in the movie. So when Kasdan offers him the, like, you're the wild color guy in Silverado, he doesn't want to do it. Because he's like, I want to like stare off into the middle distance.
I want to be the hero.
I want to be the guy a few words.
And in that movie,
but Kasdan uncorks him, and it
Kevin
fucking
Kline.
It
is.
And Scott Glenn.
It's a fun movie though. Yeah. Like it's a fun.
Yeah. But that starts to make him. That's the first thing that sort of puts him on the map.
And then he's in this John Badham movie, American Flyers. But the most important thing is that in '87 he makes The Untouchables with Brian De Palma. He makes No Way Out, which is a horny as fuck, fun neo-noir. Have you seen No Way Out? Have you seen Horny Out?
Have.
Great movie.
That's the Hackman one?
No, Roger Donaldson. Oh, well, Hackman's in it. Yeah, Roger Donaldson, Sean Young, they fuck in a cab. Two hits in '88. He does Bull Durham, baseball movie, romantic comedy, a brilliant film.
Right.
That's great.
But
does a big monologue.
Is the first of the like hold the center movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bull Durham is just like kind of the perfect Costner movie star text, right?
Of course. He's so good in it.
He's like, so good in it.
It's like, yeah, the thing where it's like he's a little washed up, but he's still got all of it. And he's like, he's just like pure like alpha sex appeal, but like without giving a shit. Then he does Field of Dreams in 1989. Another baseball movie.
Which everyone says, don't do fucking 2 baseball movies in a row.
Don't do this corny thing. Like, what is this? Like, and obviously that's a sort of hit at the time that gets nominated for Best Picture, but it's then just like a generational movie.
Yeah. But I think that starts to solidify you cannot tell Kevin Costner what to do.
That's true.
Right? Like, there's so many reasons for him not to do Field of Dreams. Least of them just, you can't do 2 baseball movies in a row. This is too similar. And he's like, you don't pass on 2 scripts like this. And now it's like Costner seeing the fucking Matrix, right? He's like, here's my career. It's mapped out. I'm going here. I'm going here. And if people say no to him or doubt him, he just fucking drives through them.
He also makes Tony Scott movie called Revenge, which is a flop, which I've never seen. One of the Tony Scotts I've never seen. Yeah, some people really spoke up for it. We can talk about that. Never. Now, Michael Blake, as you mentioned, and the producer Jim Wilson of that film, Stacy's Nights. They get to know Kevin Costner when they're making that movie. And then, of course, after that, Kevin Costner goes off and becomes a superstar, whereas those 2 guys struggle to get anything produced. Now, Michael Blake goes and reads Dee Brown's very famous novel book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, which is like a big history of Native Americans in the West. And he sort of starts getting into it, and he gets inspired by this one story in the book about a teamster who went out to resupply a tiny fort during the Civil War that was like way out on the frontier, and there was nobody there. And he's like, that's an idea, right? That's what he's like. Do you think he's like, that's an idea?
Yeah, I think it's a really good impression, David.
Don't know what Michael Blake sounds like, I'll admit. This is all going to sound very patronizing if I read these Michael Blake quotes, but he loves how Indians take great pride in the fact that they were partners with nature and their sense of community. He sounds like he's writing in a fucking journal, and his name is John Dunbar.
Yeah.
I love the animals with whom we share the planet. I love open space. I love the West as it once was, teeming with buffalo and wolves. It's like all this fucking fairy-minded, rose-tinted sort of like, things were simpler then, and the people who were here first, they understood the land and we don't, all this shit.
He pitches this to Costner.
He talks about it with Costner, and Costner's like, don't you dare write another movie. I guess because Blake's written a bunch of screenplays that have gone nowhere. And he's like, write a book. You have a much better chance of reaching someone with a book. Now, Griffin, I'm shaking my finger at you. I'm doing that because Michael Blake said he shook his finger at him.
Well,
Costner was shaking his finger. And so he took the advice of Costner's big American finger and went off and wrote Dances with Wolves as a book. Guess what? Nobody wanted to publish it.
No
Fuck
interest.
you, Kevin Costner. Because I do feel like, just to be clear, like people are like the Western was dead. The Western wasn't dead. It was definitely not obviously the cultural phenomenon it was in the 50s, but the Western in the 80s, yes, it is more either comic or it's like Clint Eastwood doing Pale Rider, where it's this kind of stripped down, very dark thing. Where it's like, let's try to confront some of the realities of this. The romance of the Western is definitely a little dead.
And let's say Costner is first and foremost a romantic. Everything that Costner does is tinged with like some romance.
Now, at the same time, you've got fucking Reagan in office, who's got this whole sort of stirring, like,
it's Morning in America.
Yeah, and like America, and what's about fields and shit.
America's
and I ride around on a horse. Like, whenever Reagan like gets shot or does something that makes him look old, he's like, I'm just gonna get on a horse and ride around, and people will be like, yeah, the Gipper's on a horse, America's stronger than ever. Like, it's a time of this kind of fucking nonsense feeling.
Yes.
Not to speak ill of America, of course, our greatest
a great country that's never done anything wrong.
Fucking but so
America,
he's shopping this
Amazon
book around.
of countries.
Finally, a tiny publisher wants to do it. Gives them $6,500 to like basically do like a little paperback pressing of it. And
Publishes
Kevin Costner,
immediately.
ring. Yeah. I'm going to option your book. I'm going to write a screenplay.
Do you think he's angry when he's like, you fucking told me to write a fucking book, and the second I finally get this book published, you're like, should have been a screenplay. Adapt it for me.
I guess, right. He has Michael Blake adapt it. Costner says he found it very charming. He liked lines like, I want to see the West before it's gone, or I decided to assign myself cleanup duty. He liked the simplicity of it. He liked the Dunbar character. What attracts me to a film are little things, not the big ones. So things like that he wants to kill the wolf and then they become friends.
Simplicity.
Costner's a softie.
Dignity, humor, poignancy.
Costner does feel like the book is entertaining, right? He's not like, I'm trying to make like a lecture about like Native Americans and how we mistreated them or anything like that. But the quote here is, I've said it's about how the West was lost, but I'm not trying to set the record straight. It's about behavior, about people ill-equipped to deal with what was coming, about the bigoted mentality of soldiers in the West. We had a lot of films portraying the Indians as the enemy, a few showing they were cheated. This film explores how they were felt being cheated. It's a very intimate approach to a big subject. Now, he knows this is a tough sell. Of course, right, we haven't mentioned Heaven's Gate, which came out in 1980 and basically bankrupted a studio. Did kind of make the big Western.
The Western epic.
Yeah.
Dead.
Like dead
Done.
in the ground.
Absolutely.
Too scary.
Right. So no one wants to touch this.
Beyond that, Costner's like, I want to make a film. There's no battle in it, really. Like, it's not like a film with like a shootout exactly. Obviously, there's like action sequences, sort of. But it's not like a film where it's like, and then we build to this epic climax where there's a big battle or anything like that. No, it's like, it's going to be a lot of it in a non-English language. It's going to have a lot of animals in it.
Costner's line was, and this was when he was promoting the film.
Right.
He says this. It's a dumb first movie.
Right. Like,
full of kids, animals, first-time actors speaking in a foreign language, a period piece on top of that. On paper, it's an insane thing for him to do. It's
the same thing for him to do, especially given that he's a star and he's putting a lot of himself on the line for it.
And at first he's like, well, I'll find a director to do this.
Right.
And every director he hires, he's sort of withheld the names of the people who came close to doing it out of respect. But he says there were 3 or 4 directors who he went pretty far along with developing it with them. And every one of them, they'd get to a point where they go, and by the way, we cut this scene. Or we don't need to show him doing this 3 times or whatever it is. And Costner would go like, I'm sorry, I disagree. Fired, right? And eventually he goes like, I need to direct this not because I think I'm the best person directed, but because I think I'm the only person who can maintain what I think this thing needs to be. But in everyone's mind, if he were just starring in this and hiring a director to do it, I think Hollywood would already have been like, this guy's really like overcashing his status right now. He's on a good run as a movie star, but he's not invincible.
This movie came out in 1990. I would say he was not really a movie star until 1987. He's only been a movie star for a couple of years, and he's like, I'm going to direct a movie.
This is like
it's folly.
This is like if Chris Pratt after Jurassic World was like, I'm going to direct Dances with Wolves. And you were like, dude, you just got fucking validated.
Yeah, no, 100%. So
you just got to the A-list. So then the moment he decides he's directing it as well, people immediately call it Kevin's Gate. They're like, this is his folly.
That is the joke.
This guy's arrogance. He's going too fast, too far. And the movie goes over budget. It goes over schedule.
Yes. So, right. He funds it by selling the foreign rights. He gets Orion, which is sort of on its last legs, to jump on 2 weeks before production. They do guarantee him final cut.
Wild that, as you're saying, Orion on its final legs, and yet this is only their second to last Best Picture winner.
Obviously, they have Silence of the Lambs the next year. They filed for bankruptcy at the end of 1991, but not because of Dances with Wolves, damn it.
I think it was Clifford was the last movie.
Well,
that's the one that got delayed by 3 years, right?
Right.
Yes. He does say, right, there were a bunch of directors that he worked with who were very well known. One said, get rid of the Civil War, start out in the middle of nowhere. Another said, cut the Stands with a Fist character. It's a cliche. That one I might have taken that out.
First note is dead wrong. I actually think the opening of this movie is the best part of this film.
The opening of this movie is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Anyway, he insists on casting Native American actors and having them speak Lakota by and large. Now, I think there are a lot of sort of, correct nitpicks about like the language is not quite right here. Lakota has this like gendered thing where it's like there's two genders, two forms.
There's masculine and feminine versions of words. And Russell Means said that like he saw it with a bunch of Lakota.
And they were laughing because it was like they're using the female form here instead of the male form, things like that.
Russell Means, who then later ends up in fucking Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah.
Watching this movie again, I did have a lot of like, oh, this is making me view some other movies we've covered in the past of this podcast differently. You cannot help but feel like Last of the Mohicans is Michael Mann being like, I'm going to get so much more fucking accurate with this shit.
Right.
Because of complaints like that.
But I suppose it's worth acknowledging, right, that this was still, it was unusual to see a movie like this in 1990, certainly with the language being used and like, a vast amount of Native American actors. I mean, almost everyone in the cast, obviously, because it's largely just Costner out in the wilderness with them.
And like the second lead in this movie,
Mary McDonnell,
yes, is basically new to movies, has been doing theater for like 20 years.
Yeah, she's in Madawan.
Yeah, that's the only one like major film, and that was not a Yeah, she's I think incredibly good in this film.
She's great. I mean, Mary McDonnell's a great actor.
At some point, pin for later, want to talk about the best supporting actress category of 1990.
Okay, let's talk about
wild.
the Oscars, certainly. Okay, so Graham Greene obviously gets cast as Kicking Bird, or sort of the biggest Native American role in the movie. He's a guy who's been in movies and TV, but this is his big breakout. I feel like he's still one of the most famous actors of of all time, Native American actors of all time. He rocks. I love him always, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I always think he's good. This is an absolute like just kind of stoic stand and kind
he's
of
got a little humor and stuff to him. I don't know. He's great.
I think the character's a little
yeah, sure.
As written.
Every single character in this movie is thinly written.
You're not wrong about that.
Yeah. But Graham Greene at the time is like, look, this thing is lighter on cliche, basically. I'm sure the roles he's being offered, at the time were mostly villainous or incredibly one-dimensional.
Yeah. You read the quotes of like Native Americans speaking about this film at the time of its release, and even the ones who are the most critical are kind of giving it faint praise awards, where they're like, it's really easy to mock. He does get some stuff better than basically the last 80 years of movies have.
Yes.
I guess we give him a little credit for that.
Mary McDonnell, he likes that she's kind of unknown. Costner says we saw more famous actors, but I felt like having a face people had seen over and over again would take something away from it.
This movie
he also goes on about how she's a woman, not a girl. I guess she has like presence, but Costner just loves to hit these talking points over and over again. But
you look at the poster for this movie, that is basically just a Kevin Costner headshot.
Yeah, well, so
against a purple background of buffalo, and it's just Costner dances with wolves. Like, they're like, the only thing we can sell this movie on really is just people are buying Costner stock.
What's the tagline, though? It's one of the worst taglines of all time. Lieutenant John Dunbar is about to discover the frontier, ... within himself.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Now, this poster, I don't like the tagline, but I think this poster is kind of amazing, which is just of the buffalo.
Yeah.
And like, which is my favorite scene in the movie.
That
obviously.
Is the one transcendent sequence in the film.
Incredible. It's why I have long been like, I've seen Dance with Wolves a couple times over my life. It's not a big movie for me. It came out before I was even a kid. And I long thought of it as this footnote movie of like, yeah, be Goodfellas. Fuck that movie. And then I saw it and I was like, well, it's pretty. That was always my take on Dance with Wolves. And when I watched it this time around, I was like, I don't really like this movie very much.
And I'm not,
but I cannot deny that it is gorgeous to look at, and the music is really nice.
Yes.
And basically everyone looks good.
Yeah, there's stuff in it.
That's about what I have.
But that one sequence,
but the fucking buffalo sequence is so cool.
Is transcendent. And you're just like, if this was the whole movie, I would understand why this movie was as big as it was when it came out.
The only other thing I respect about it is what I said, which is like, it doesn't build to some silly climax, really. He's just kind of like, look, man, they're going to come for you. That's the end of this. And I'm going to get out of here because, I don't want to go back with them. It's been nice. Like, that's the ending is at least something to me.
For how much it is obviously cited as this, like, prime example of like the white savior, noble savage, he joins the tribe and becomes the best of all of them kind of movie. You watch this now and you're like, it is relatively subtle in its plot movements in that like the stakes of the movie are relatively small and the movie just ends with like, I guess it's time for us to leave. And then they mention like within 13 years, everything was wiped out. This isn't a movie that has a last stand.
Right. It's not The Last Samurai where it's like, Tom Cruise and Ken Watanabe are the two remaining guys on the field at the end fighting together. It's like, no, they vibe with him because he's all right. And they're like, hey, he's nice.
Well, like,
and that's kind of it. Like,
a thing we complain about all the time.
They give him a name.
Is people complaining about Avatar.
Yeah.
And people love to make their fucking like dances with Fern Gully jokes or whatever, right? And when people were shit talking Avatar when it came out, the biggest talking point was just like, he just did Dances with Wolves with aliens. But I do think you watch this and you're like, well, Avatar, he turns it into the ultimate epic. This is for all the marbles. Well, he truly, the tribe has said, you are the best that has existed in generations. You are Turuk Makto.
Well, he does ride Turuk.
He does.
I mean, it's just in the film.
Well, he rides the Mighty Akron.
The Mighty Akron, the biggest one. He
becomes Turuk Makto. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, that's in the film, and it's like we can't ignore that.
Yes, but
like that's something that happened.
No, of course that happened.
Did that,
and that's history. That's just fact. That's just fact that's what happened. But this is a movie that is more just about him living with them.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about Avatar, which is a movie I enjoy, but which is also, of course, silly nonsense. But we love the silly nonsense because it's about aliens and shit. So you're like, cool. But Avatar is this like battle cry of like, what if we actually fucking turned the planet against the colonizers and annihilated them?
Right.
Hell yeah. And you're like, hell yeah. Dances with Wolves, right, is this kind of wistful, like, yeah, it was beautiful once here, and I'm the beginning of something terrible that's coming, and
they don't.
It's time for me to move on.
Nature and Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, there's
like you do see his little butt.
You do see his little butt.
His butt looks good.
His butt looks great.
His
butt adds half.
You're getting at my other problem here, which is David's.
I'm just adding half a star.
Okay. What you just said, the way you just described the movie, is the version of the movie that I totally want to plug into. And the problem is, one of my favorite movies of all time does that as well as any movie is going to hit that for me.
What's that?
Which is The New World.
Great movie.
But I feel like that's Malik's take on that story is, right? It's like the beginning of the Paradise Lost thing.
Sure, for sure.
It is this guy comes, he's just like, what the fuck is the world I'm from? This is the better way to live. And then with him, he brings all the sort of like death and destruction. I think that's a more cynical movie, but it's also a more poetic movie.
Right.
It's a more transcendent movie to me. It's a more pointed film to me.
I think The New World is a better film than Dances with Wolves. I do agree with you on that front. Yes. The thing that I don't love this movie. I think it's okay at best. And the thing that is more fascinating about it to me is just that, right, America was like, yes, this fairly low-key film that's 3 hours long and doesn't really have a huge ending.
They couldn't have been more
over and over and over again, like huge hit.
And it's like months and months and months of the press being like, stinker, PU, incoming, comes out, immediately hits.
Right.
It wasn't like one of these slow burn things where it's like people came around to it. Even like Unforgiven was like that, where it really like kind of trucked it out.
Like a third of what this made.
Yes.
Like this movie was a huge, huge hit.
Yes. In like a pretty fucking big year.
Well, let's see. 1990?
I want to pull this open because now we've covered a good amount of the 1990 box office.
The third biggest film of 1990.
So there are 3 movies that are just like absolutely culturally transformative in 1990.
I would say 4, but go ahead.
Number 1 is Home Alone.
Correct. Yes.
Number 2 is Ghost. Number 3 is Dances with Wolves.
Yeah, I would say there's a 4th.
The number 4 movie at the box office is, I assume this is not what you're saying?
No, it is not.
Number 4 is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That might be worldwide. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is 5 domestic. 4th domestic is Pretty Woman, which is another. Oh,
you're right. I'm sorry. I fucking Box Office Mojo was doing in-year releases versus calendar grosses. So it's Home Alone, Ghost, Dances with Wolves, Pretty Woman. I would even argue
Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I know.
No, Pretty Woman.
And
weird.
Yeah,
weird that was a huge movie.
Yeah. Here's the bottom half of the top 10. Okay. Number 6, Hunt for Red October. Number 7, Total Recall. Number 8, Die Hard 2. Number 9, Dick Tracy, which is seen as a disappointment. It
is. Right. But it's still a big hit. Right.
Number 10 is Kindergarten Cop. Number 11 is Back to the Future Part 3.
So we've covered a lot of these films.
A lot of them. This is an interesting snapshot year.
We might do Columbus one day. We're probably not going to do Zucker. That's a ways away. Gary Marshall is definitely not happening.
Well, we have to do Penny first.
Made a ton of movies. Yeah, we have to do Penny first.
It's an interesting time. Home Alone is obviously a children's film that performed at such a berserk level. But Ghost and Dances with Wolves are these odd, like, these are sort of like movies. Yeah. Big, sweeping, grown-up epics. Yeah. Is Dances with Wolves emotional, rated PG-13? I can't even. That's a good question. I assume so. Yeah, PG-13. Yeah. It's not like that violent. It's got some arrows, It's got arrows. Yeah. It's got some arrow wounds, some blood, some surgery.
An extended sex scene.
But it's like fairly tame, candlelit sex. It's got Costner butt. I imagine listeners will write to us in letters that we immediately throw into the incinerator. People who are older than us are going to try to explain to us what we're not getting about what was going on in this moment. I remember I had do you have more to this thought? I'm trying to crack it, but what are you going to say? I remember when I was a kid on the Oscar Watch forums, there were people there who were older who would talk about this movie. Were like, right, you just didn't understand. It was such a change to see this very stirring old fashioned kind of epic. It just was there just wasn't a lot of stuff on offer like this. Costner fit the mold so well, for that kind of old fashioned 50s star, mustache, nice big hair, John Dunbar, and so it was appealing for that very reason. It was just you don't get a movie like this anymore. You go to the fucking movie theater and see Dances with Wolves. Here's the other thing I want to call out. Between 1980 and 1995, Kevin Costner, Clint Eastwood, Warren Beatty, and Mel Gibson all win Best Picture and Best Director. Oh, I'm sorry, and Robert Redford. Beatty never won Best Picture, but yeah, sure. All win Best Director. Then. Yes. And 4 out of the 5 win Best Picture. Beatty won for Reds, but he didn't win Best Picture. Won Best Director. I'm sorry. It should be. But I'm also adding Redford in there. So that's the 5, right? Redford in 80. Yeah. Right. There are 5 absurdly handsome A-list leading men. Costner is the greenest. What about Sidney Pollack? Handsome. He acts. I don't think he fits into the paradigm of what I'm talking about.
but guys who were A-list leading men, were like raw fucking magnetism, and were just like, I do things my way, and sort of did the big bet on themselves. In all cases, making the kind of movie they don't make anymore in one way. Or if not, they don't make anymore the kind of movie that was an unconventional thing to sort of bet the farm on.
Nobody makes movies like this about therapy. Reds, what are you, crazy? You're making a 3+ hour epic about a socialist. Like, it'll never work. It works. What are the other movies we're talking about? Dance with Wolves, Unforgiven, Clint, Westerns are over. You can't be like
examining your own legacy. You're deepening the well of what you used to represent.
I told you I was guilty. Fuck. Oh, goddamn it. Give him the Oscar. Braveheart is the craziest one of all. It's like, no, you're not Scottish. What the fuck are you talking about? But again,
there is a juice to all 5 of those wins that is almost this like bizarre version of an underdog narrative of like, he proved us all wrong.
A little bit, yeah, of course.
And you're like, wait, who proved us wrong? The guy who was already at the top of the fucking mountain?
Hollywood loves to do that.
This is what I'm saying.
Like later, yeah.
This is what I'm saying. I think that is an X factor you cannot discount.
They kind of do it with Clooney when Clooney is hot as a filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I mean now, of course, right. At his hottest.
Yeah, he put boys in the boat. They said it couldn't be done.
He dared put boys in boats.
He went to every studio and they said, boys must be on land. And he said, let me put some boys in the boat.
He would just wheel them in the boat. They would be rowing. And the studio would be like, no, take those boys out of the boat.
That is the Oscar narrative, right? That is the X factor. And let's mention several of those times, those are the guys beating Scorsese in this period where he's like, am I cursed? Does the Academy hate me?
Yeah.
Why are they giving it to all these guys over me? Right. Yeah. But I think they love the narrative of these fucking guys betting on themselves and just being like, oh, you've gone from being a megastar to an uber star or whatever it is. Now you're also an auteur. This movie is so much more commercially successful and popular with mainstream audiences than the other 4 movies I just listed.
For sure. All those movies did well.
Yeah.
Dances with Wolves was a blockbuster.
Relative to what they were. Braveheart even kind of underperformed a little.
Braveheart made less money than people think it did.
But then exploded on video.
Yeah, I'm very surprised.
That was a huge video movie.
It came out in the spring.
Right.
Did all right. And then won the Oscar basically a year later.
It made 75 domestic. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah. That was its budget.
But that was below Mel Gibson's. He was basically $100 million guy at that point.
And Apollo 13 was supposed to win Best Picture and didn't. I mean, in that it was the favorite or whatever. And Braveheart was a slight surprise.
That double VHS was so ubiquitous in so many living rooms.
Dances with Wolves must have been a double as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be.
But it did. I mean, as a kid, you'd just be like, I guess that movie's important. It has to be.
I very quickly was like, that movie's boring.
Well, I think I would often not watch them, but I'd be like, if I were a grown-up, I would want to watch this. That looks boring to me. But the double VHS implies that there's something I'm not mature enough to understand. I wonder how much of it, because there is like a Western boom that goes on for about 4 or 5 years after this movie. And then kind of abruptly hits a wall.
Yeah, because cyberspace comes in.
Yes,
but you're right. In there, yeah, we plug in. But in the of course, you've got Wide Up, you've got Tombstone, you've got Unforgiven. I mean, what are the other big westerns of the early '90s?
When did the Young Guns movies come out? Before this?
Oh, those Young Guns! They were so young.
They were the youngest of the guns. Okay, so they're before
the first Young Guns.
I guess that's more in the Silverado, and those movies are more kind of like
well, there's Quick and the Dead, there's Maverick. There's the Wild Bill movie, and then there's stuff like Legends
Geronimo.
of the Fall.
Yeah, right, these are some of the big flops.
Legends that Fall and Far and Away, which are like not westerns, but they are westerns. Like they're big American epics on landscapes, but they're a little a lot of cool westerns,
Cosner,
and some bad ones.
In that fucking timeline of my career video, it's like speaks highly of Silverado, but also refers to it as like. That's like, it's kind of like a fun Cracker Jack Sunday matinee movie. No, I think it had been a long time since someone had like made a Western with this sort of ambition, which you just have to wonder how much of it's like right place, right time. He did this well enough and people were like, you know what? It has been a while.
I think
we're hungry for this.
I think he had the juice as a star. So people are interested in that.
Yeah.
They're interested in a Kevin Costner vanity project then. They may not be now. We'll see.
We'll see.
Well, the stakes on Horizon are, I think, lower than people realize in a way. because the budget on them individually isn't that high.
He spread the costs.
Right. We'll see how much people sustain interest in it, certainly.
But what is most bizarre to me is that this is his only acting nomination.
Which, I mean, that's not surprising to me because he was a movie star, and like Harrison Ford, they would kind of ignore movie stars. Redford, another one, where they'd be like, yeah, you just do your thing. Who cares? You didn't turn into something, so we're not interested.
Like, how does he not get a fucking JFK nomination?
That's
the one to me, especially since that movie was basically the front runner going into that Oscar season. That's probably his best.
I don't know. Beatty beats him out, I guess. I don't know. We talked about that year. It's Hopkins, Beatty for Bugsy, De Niro for Cape Fear, Nolte for The Prince of Tides, and Williams for The Fisher King.
So that is a huge.
It's a pretty good year. It's Beatty is fucking a 0 in Bugsy, so we should have kicked him out, but whatever. This year, him getting an acting nod is a little silly. I don't think he's particularly good in this movie.
I think but he holds the center.
Deuce. Yeah, some of his line readings really just like fucking just fall flat on the ground for me.
Especially the voiceover. This in the fucking GQ piece, they talk about how his whole thing is how like Spartan he is in his acting style, right? That Costner is the king of doing like so little and having it feel weighty and massive. And he's good at tossing off dialogue.
Yeah, he's a totally fine line reader.
And the other thing he's good at is the sort of like the Bull Durham, the Molly's game, where it's like begrudgingly, you're forcing me to give a monologue, right? And there's this feeling of like, I didn't want to share my emotions and now it's spilling out of me. And I'm going to explain to you exactly how things are. But this voiceover shit plays to like his worst qualities.
I would agree. Let me get back to the dossier. They search around for where to shoot this movie. The novel is set more in like Comanche country, so they're thinking Oklahoma or Texas, but they decide to shoot it in South Dakota. It's why the tribe in this film are the Sioux, because South Dakota still has buffalo. And they're like, well, that's good. The largest private herd of buffalo in the world, 3,500 buffalo, is housed near Pierre, South Dakota. So that's where they shot the film.
I'd say that was a great call.
Great call. And also South Dakota does have lots and lots of Native American tribes that you can work with. It's like that's a state with, and it's gorgeous. It's all this open space. Like, the shoot was difficult, a logistical nightmare. When I said 3,500 buffalo, did that sound like it'd be difficult to deal with? You're right. Difficult. You've also got horses. You have wolves who are difficult to deal with. Wolves.
Most of them don't want to dance.
Right. You got wagons, you got, giant sort of sets you have to build out there, all that stuff. Workday 16 hours. It's going to be fucking 100 degrees in the summer. It's going to be 20 degrees in the winter at night or whatever. They go $1.5 million over budget. Costner was paid $3 million to make the movie. He puts $2.5 million back into the production. Classic cost. Obviously, Kevin's Gate. They're all talking about it. Kevin Reynolds is brought in to help. Now, the rumors that he helped save the picture, he says, nonsense. I just sort of helped with the buffalo hunt sequence, was just, basically doing second unit.
Which is impressive. I don't know how they pull it off.
So cool.
I'll unpack it. It's some of the things I found out in a moment. But basically, by all accounts, when Warner Brothers offers Costner Prince of Thieves, he points to Reynolds' help on the buffalo sequence.
Right. He's like, this guy can handle the scale.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That ends up being Reynolds' guarantor, along with just being friends with Costner, although that will constantly be on shaky ground.
They bring in Kathy Smith, who's an artist and a scholar who's worked on a lot of Westerns after this movie, to do lots of like historical accuracy stuff. They obviously have someone there translating lines into Doris Leader Charge is the person who translated the screenplay. Says Lakota is a very difficult language to translate, so they had to massage it as best they could to make it like actors able to speak it. I don't think they half-assed that stuff at all. Like, I think no, they wanted the effort made. You know what I mean? But then I do think that Dances with Wolves took on maybe a little too much of the metal of like, this is the movie that really took it seriously. And then I think there's a whole generation of like Native Americans who are like, that movie's bullshit, right? You know, because it's sort of presented as like, no, this is like the good one that like isn't like the old Westerns, right? Like where we're not just like one-dimensional villains or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but it's still corny and we're not the heroes of it at all, really. And like, you know, it's still about fucking Kevin Costner and all that.
It is
the frontier within himself or whatever.
It is the thing that is fascinating about Horizon being on our horizon is you're just like, what is his version of this like today? And certainly like all these movies are going to feel different post Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, sure.
Which in a certain way feels like Scorsese saying like, this is maybe the last time we should ever let a white person make a movie like this. Like that's part of the text of that movie in a lot of ways. And it does feel like we're probably on the cusp of like, there will at some point in the next 15 or 20 years probably be an epic scale Western directed by a native filmmaker. And it will feel impactful to be like, we are finally letting someone tell the story from a different perspective versus what we, you know, Dances with Wolves starts like 30 plus years of explicit, like kind of revisionist, let's be less racist Westerns.
Let's be aware of how bad we are.
And obviously, look, there are Ford movies and Hawks movies that were like sort of working that into the subtext and what have you. But this is the first of the movies to really be like respect.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not enough of a Western expert to know in the 80s, like, is there any, but anyway.
It certainly gets pegged that way. As you said, it becomes
just becomes
the
one standard bearer, right?
Yes.
Now there's a 4-hour special edition. Griffin, you didn't watch this, did you?
No, it was one of the most foolhardy Griffin. You know what? I think I'm going to do this. And you just were like, yeah, have fun with that. And I watched the 3-hour cut of this movie. I got the fucking Shout Factory Steelbook that has
to.
That Steelbook, by the way, is the only version of it where you can get the theatrical cut. For whatever weird reason, the extended cut has sort of become the default.
Is not happy about that.
No.
He says, I didn't really work on the longer version. It just has like a bunch of deleted scenes in it.
Yeah.
Right. Wilson does it. I release the versions I want. They're long. I don't need them for the... Yeah, obviously, he had fucking director's cut on this. Like, John Barry wins his 5th Academy Award for doing the music to this. I think the music is 50% of this movie. The music is unbelievably good.
It is.
And, you know, again, if you're in the theater and all you know is that busting makes you feel good or whatever 80s slop you've been served up, not that Ghostbusters is bad. And then there's just this like stirring score out of like, you know, an epic from 100, you know, like where you're just like, what? You know, like it just, I think, I mean, obviously he did this same trick with Out of Africa, which is like an even more boring epic that fooled the Academy a few years prior.
This same year,
it's great.
Columbus and everyone talk about when they were making fucking Home Alone.
Yeah, another stirring epic of the American frontier.
Well, they take the big swing.
Chicago suburbs.
Columbus is friends with Spielberg.
Yes,
let's
get Williams.
Do you think we could fucking get Williams to do it? And they throw the flyer at him. You wouldn't want to fucking score this kid does pranks on robbers movie.
He's like, sure, I wrote Christmas as music.
Right.
Would you like it? It's the most beautiful score you've ever heard.
And they hear his score and they're just like, he just made this thing a blockbuster. And with no disrespect to the rest of Home Alone, you do watch that movie and you're like, half of its gross comes from that score. That score gives that movie a sense of like...
But that score, the Home Alone score by John Williams, is just like the Jurassic Park score by John Williams, where he's giving you this like beautiful soaring American symphony. And in Home Alone, right, it's for about an 8-year-old who brutalizes criminals. And Jurassic Park, it's about people getting eaten by dinosaurs. He's like, bah, 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 bah. You know, like everyone's so into it.
Was not one of my movies growing up.
I mean, I saw Home Alone a zillion times.
It's certainly a well-crafted film. But you could imagine the version of it where like David Newman does the score and it has slide whistles. And you're like, yeah, that's like a comedy that kids like. And the John Williams score makes it feel like a fucking movie. And there's a similar thing going on with the John Barry score in this film.
Before we talk about the plot, the film was released in just 14 theaters, expands the next weekend, is a massive hit, makes $184 million at the domestic box office, was never number 1, was always just sort of like vibrating around the number 2, number 3, you know, like, you know.
I think for a while it was the highest grossing, never number 1 movie.
That makes sense.
Until it was dethroned by... My Big Fat Greek Wedding, right? That still holds the record?
Right. Another movie about finding yourself in the American frontier.
Yeah. But if John Barry had scored that, It would have won Best Picture.
The film won 7 Academy Awards: picture, director, screenplay, score, sound, cinematography, and editing. It's nominated for 3 acting awards, wins none: art direction and costume. We'll talk about that later. The film Dances with Wolves is about John Dunbar, a Union officer in the Civil War, the American Civil War. You guys aware of this one? Not Alex Garland's Civil War.
Thank you for clarifying.
And he's been injured, and he's going to get his leg cut off, as was the fashion of the time.
People were losing limbs.
I think this opening is pretty incredible.
It's awesome. It's a really interesting way to open the movie, honestly.
It opens like abruptly.
Yeah.
You're so dropped into it. Yeah, here's just fucking like a medic tent with all these guys dying and bleeding out. And they're basically just like, they just fucking cut the leg. We don't have the time or the resources.
They were saw crazy in those
to
days.
save him. They'd be sawing.
It's easier to saw this motherfucker off.
Well, because I mean, to be fair to the Civil War medics, like they didn't understand much about medicine. They didn't have like penicillin or any antibiotics or anything like that. They did know if your leg was shot, it would probably get infected, and if it got infected, you could die. So if you cut it off,
they were
that would stop it.
They were underpaid. They didn't even have civilians banging their pots and pans every day to show them respect.
Maybe they did. You don't know.
Maybe they did.
There wasn't a lot to do in those days.
Right. People were just doing that anyway.
They should cut in this movie to a Walter Brennan style old coot banging his pots and pans. Thank you for your service.
They're going to cut his leg off. He's like, fuck that. I'll just get on a horse and ride out and die.
I'd rather die on my own terms, which is very Costner.
Christ-like
right?
arms out. My wife goes, Jesus Christ. And
which
he basically
in
spurs a successful charge on the Confederates by doing this.
In 1990, like, when he does this, America's like, yes, please, give me all you got. Costner's our fucking Christ, right? In 1997, when he's pulling the same moves in Postman, people are booing. Everyone's responding the way your wife did.
It's like, good job, buddy. I guess his leg heals. It's not really addressed, but...
Well, they get a special doctor.
No. That's what happens.
The officer.
Right.
This is what he called. I mean, it's what's interesting about the setup, where he's just like, I don't want to live a compromised life. I'd rather kill myself on my own terms. And then he fails. But because of the accidental valor
they're like,
of his actions,
let's actually take a look at your leg.
Let's bring you to a specialist.
And let's give you a nice horse.
Right. He gets like promoted.
And pick your assignment. Where would you like to go? And I would pick, what do you think the easiest assignment is? It's definitely not what he picked.
No.
It's like Maine. I don't know. It's like, what's the furthest from the front, right?
Yeah.
You know, all the way north, but somewhere where we've been there for a while. There's like running water, maybe.
USO show. Were there USO shows in this day?
Yeah, he should do a USO show. What?
I would go to Nolans.
No, that's in the South. There's a civil war happening back.
But I feel like there was some conflict happening
in the South? A lot.
Well, yeah, but like I'm just saying, like there's battles. I'm like away from.
I would sneak off and I'd go have a friggin' mint julep.
I don't think Bourbon Street was like chill in the middle of the Civil War. I don't think you could just get a hand grenade and like.
It wasn't HBO's Treme with like, you know, how am I going to open my gourmet restaurant? He goes to Fort Hays, a real place out there in the west of Kansas.
Maury Chaykin fucking killing it.
Maury Chaykin,
an incredible one scene.
A guy who is insane. Where initially you're just kind of like, oh, is this guy just grumpy? And then like 2 lines of dialogues later, you're like, oh, he's like, this guy's like a lunatic.
You go from, is he just grumpy, to how drunk is this guy, to is this guy fully unraveling in real time? Which he does.
Yes.
Yes.
So he's like, what's going on with you? And Costner's like, I want to see the West before it's gone. He's like, How do you feel about shooting yourself in the head? I'm thinking about doing that ASAP, like next 5 mins. Anyway, go that away. Right?
When he does the salute, it's like so unhinged.
His line is, he says like, I just peed all over myself and there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Yeah,
that's the quote I thought you were going to do.
Right. And then Costner walks out and he shoots himself in the head. Which is just like, holy shit.
He shoots himself by being like, he's like, hey, knocking on the window. He's like,
check this out.
Right. It's insane. The idea.
But this is also part of the setup where it's just like,
no one knows that he's out there. This is the idea, I guess. When you're watching it again, you're kind of like, crazy way to lead a movie.
Insane.
Right. He goes out there with the great Robert Pastorelli, who we probably discussed in
Michael.
Michael
had a very tragic end, but was a great character actor.
And then Robert Pastorelli gets shot by invading Pawnee, including a young Wes Studi.
He's playing the Walter Brennan type.
He is, sure. He's like
crazy,
right? Farts.
He does fart again, right? Like our audience is shifting, and they're just like, "Is this like a Western? Why is this guy farting?"
Have I told this
story? What was up with Maury Chaykin? Did that guy shoot himself?
Have I told this story before?
I don't know, Griffin.
The story is there's a scene in the motion picture Draft Day, which I can only speak to my own experience here. But the takeaway I had from working on Draft Day was I think Costner kind of directs every movie he's in.
At least if in the scenes he's in.
Which isn't to say he's always like the secret director to the extent of, say, something like Waterworld. But he is a guy who like kind of can't not think holistically about everything surrounding him, not just his performance. I also think the decisions he makes do not tend to be in the name of his own ego. You're like, he's right. Almost always he's right.
Sure.
He just has good fucking instincts, and he'll block things, and he'll take away dialogue from himself and give them to another actor. It's like, I'm saying too much. The camera should be here, whatever it is. But there was a scene where we have like a bonding moment where I try to talk to him. I catch him. One of the many scenes where I interrupt him.
Your laptop's broken.
Not that scene.
Oh, that scene's good though.
One of many scenes where I like interrupt him talking to Jennifer Garner. And he turns to me for the first time. He tries to like engage with me. And he goes like, Rick, women are tricky, or whatever he says. And then I'm trying to like match him. And I go like, yeah, women are like, pfft. And I make this hand gesture like
brain exploding.
Yeah. And for like weeks in the movie, Reitman kept on being like, tone it down. Too broad. Movie, you got to match Kevin's level. Don't be like too over the comedy, whatever, right? And in this scene, Reitman's just like, bigger, Griffin, bigger. And I was like, I've spent 3 weeks trying to like tone myself down to get your approval. And now he's just saying bigger. And I'm doing bigger. And he's still just like, not big enough, big. And he's like doing the hand gesture. And Costner's like, you got to go bigger. And I was like, it feels weird. He's like, you got to go bigger. And we do it. And we finally get a take, whatever. They finally feel happy enough with it. Print it. Next day in the trailer, Costner's like, can I like talk to you about the thing yesterday? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And this is like Costner giving me like a Costner monologue moment, right?
How old are you?
24?
This is crazy. Okay,
yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. I mean, this whole situation is crazy.
Yeah.
I was you might be surprised to hear, I was very overwhelmed on the set of this movie where I'm dealing with extreme personalities. He says, when I was doing Dances with Wolves, I'm not going to do the impression on this part.
When I was doing Dances with Wolves, the famous movie that won Best Picture.
I got the actor Robert Pastorelli is in this scene, and there's the scene at the campfire where he's farting and everything, right? Farting. That's very broad. And he was like, Robert, I need you to go bigger. And Pastorelli's like a fucking like an Italian, like this is not the obvious part he plays. He played a lot of like streetwise city guys, right? He's not the obvious like hooting and hollering, eating beans on the campfire kind of guy. So I think this was out of his comfort zone. He's incredibly good in this. And Costner keeps on going like, go bigger. And he's like, Kevin, I'm like huge. I couldn't go bigger. And he's like, go bigger. And Costner's got the full picture vantage point of like, I'm going to cut it to a close-up of me stoically over voiceover saying like, here I was with the most poorly behaved man I'd ever seen, or whatever it is. He needs the contrast. And Pastorelli is just like, I can't go bigger. And he's like, give me one where you just go as big as you fucking can. Basically like forces him to do one giant take. And they print it. And then they go to dailies and they all watch the dailies. And the one take that Costner won the argument on, the whole cast and crew explodes. And was like, Robert, that was incredible. And Costner goes back to his hotel. And then like 6 hours later, he gets a call from security. And he's like, I think one of your actors is like maybe having a mental breakdown. And outside the hotel, Robert Pastorelli is like wandering around at like 4 o'clock in the morning, muttering to himself, freaking out, basically having like a spiral because he was like, how could I be that wrong about my instincts, about what it felt like, and you being right when I couldn't feel
me?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, and I had a thing on Silverado where I was just trying to like keep my line about Kasdan pushing me in a moment and it felt too big and I didn't want to do it. And I watch the movie now, and every time I'm just like, I should have fucking listened to him. Sometimes it feels wrong, and you just have to like trust. And I watched the fucking scene in Draft Day, and I'm like, he's 100% right, and I should have done the take that was 10% bigger. But I do think it's an interesting Costner director story, where like he saw the big piece, because I'm like, that scene should fucking work. Like, as you're saying, this is an insane way to open the movie. You're like being shot out of a cannon.
It's a weird way to open the movie. It's
the Pastorelli chunk is tonally so bizarre for 10 minutes.
Yes.
But he knows what he's doing big picture, which is like the moment when you remove Pastorelli, when you place this guy alone on the plains, it's going to feel like a striking shift. When the first 20 minutes of the movie have been like so loud, so aggressive.
Right.
Yeah. Which is what happens.
I'll say, I don't dislike these farting scenes, but they don't work for me that well.
I think they work.
They're fine.
I think he's right.
I don't know. I'd wonder how this would play in a theater. I've never seen it in a theater.
Probably the gales of laughter.
He calls him in a voiceover the foulest man he ever met.
Yes, that's the line.
It's pretty funny. I mean, I guess there's also, it's a serious start. We're in a kind of this guy's kind of at a rock bottom, the Costner and Dunbar. It might help to just kind of be like, hey, you know,
I think it's the equivalent of the scene in Matrix Resurrections where like the sound goes out and Niobe like finally gives Neo silence for the first time.
Well, that scene fucking rocks.
Right. But you're like creating a cacophony of like shit. Like fucking Maury Chaykin shooting himself in the head and Robert Pastorelli farting.
And so now it's like, here he is. He gets to Fort Sedgwick, another real place out there in Colorado. And no one's here. Nobody is here. And now it's right. It's all right, John Dunbar. It's you and the empty horizon.
Now, if it was me, I would maybe think twice about sticking around.
Sure, I might be like, what was the way I came? That away? Go back it.
It doesn't look like anything good happened there.
I mean, sure, the place is, there's like a skeleton on the ground when they're going there. And like the place is abandoned.
But you also, I guess, I mean, the idea is that this guy is operating in this weird mental state of like, I thought I was about to die. And now my life is taking all these weird turns. I'm like, he has like no grounding, you know?
And he wants this experience. This frontier experience.
Yeah, you're also being introduced to this guy without like any backstory. You're just meeting this kind of like...
We never learn his backstory.
Exactly.
Really.
He's just kind of this shell of a man who's looking for meaning.
He meets Stands with a Fist, played by Mary McDonnell, who is like out there alone, mourning her lost husband and is mutilating herself for this reason. And he drags her back to the Sioux for her to recover, which is a bad look for him, you might think.
I would say, yeah.
But they do not, kill him on sight or whatever. And instead, like, they start to establish a bit of a rapport. They sort of trade things with each other. He starts to learn their language, learns their names. He meets Kicking Bird, played by Graham Greene, who's sort of the medicine man. Like, that's nice. He's a nice guy. The rest of this movie is so boring to me. I'm so sorry. Apart from the buffalo hunts, it's just boring.
I basically agree with you.
It's just people kind of being like, yeah, this is all right.
They sense something in him, though. It's that he's on his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
He dances with the wolves.
The wolf starts coming around.
Socks.
That scene is so funny when they go, like, we've decided to call you Dances with Wolves. And he's like, what does that mean? Right? They say it in, like, Lakota. And they're like, Dances with Wolves. And he's like, why that? And they're like, well, the other day you were dancing with the wolves. And he goes like, oh, you saw that? Like, he's kind of sheepish about it. He's like, I didn't think anyone was seeing me dance with those wolves.
He's ballroom dancing. I'm doing a ballroom dance. I don't know what else to say about this movie.
I don't either.
There's 2 hours left of the movie.
Yeah.
To be clear, when this starts.
That's the thing.
And it's a lot of vibing.
It takes just about a full hour to get to like cruising altitude with this movie, what the bulk of it is, which is him living amongst them. And then it's 2 hours that are just sort of like,
getting to know,
yeah.
the early
falling in love,
scenes where he's inviting them over to his fort or whatever, and like serving them coffee. He plays it really funny, and that he's like a desperate person who's like really lonely and is like having guests for the first time.
There are things like that really work for me.
Yeah.
Things like when he rides to them with the flag and then the flag like blows in his face. And he's like,
yeah. I love how
like,
he's kind of
they undermine
buffoonish
him
at times.
Yes.
He runs out and hits his head.
Yeah.
When I think the kids take the horse from him.
He is not some stirring badass hero. He's kind of a slightly loopy weirdo who cannot deal with, I mean, nor could I, being on the front of a gigantic, horrible war. So he's like, yeah, let me go out there and find myself. He's got kind of like a hippie thing, like 100 years earlier. And hippies are annoying. And hippies will do shit like be like, I got in touch with Native American stuff and now I know more. Like,
is that another reason why this movie hits so hard in this moment that you're coming like 30 years out of hippie culture?
Yeah. I remember this period of the 90s seeing adults who were sort of like having this like Native American vibe, like wearing graphic t-shirts or just, I don't know, but you know, like that hippie new age pure moods kind of like moment.
They had
culture.
it right.
Oh, pure moods.
Yeah.
I do love a pure mood.
Those albums hit.
They do. They're all on Spotify
like,
now.
There's stuff in it like
they're good.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are.
David, yeah. You're gonna like the way you moved.
You talking about him being like this character being such an odd goof. What was the term you used? The term you used to describe this character.
Loopy hippie goof.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. There's similarly like I kind of like in the slow burn of his romance. It does ultimately start to play out like deeply repressed teenagers. Like they're so fucking horny that they like can't stop touching each other.
Yes.
There's that sequence where they're in the woods and she keeps on pushing him away and then like jumping on him again. That's kind of funny and charming and is just sort of like bizarre and behavioral. But then it also starts to like, we're starting to codify the things that make people ultimately get tired of Costner within the decade of just like, it's always this with this guy, where it's like, we're already starting to establish the language of like, well, you know, one of the things is women go absolutely insane when they meet Costner.
I mean, yeah, right. They can't control themselves.
This is the most sexual man who has ever existed. That him just standing there like a tree makes people lose their fucking minds. Which plays differently when you're the guy who's also writing and directing the movie. And I'm watching that
seem like an insane vanity project. It's easy to tag him with that.
Totally.
Yes. But he was hot stuff.
He was
denying that.
And I'm like, I'm watching these scenes and I'm like, I'm alternating back and forth, second to second, being charmed by this or being like, is this way too much? But then a lot versus other sections of the movies where I'm just kind of bored.
I think like Mary McDonnell is good in the film.
I think she's very good.
I think Stands with a Fist is an excellent name, but like, you know, I do wonder about these directors going like, can you lose that character where it's like, is this just like a girlfriend for you to have? Like among all the other stuff that you like is happening to you, John Dunbar, this character just kind of exists for, it's like, oh, it's someone for you to fall in love with. Like
a convenient translator.
Right. Well, which that I get the dramatic necessity of like, we need someone who shares the language, each language. So that, you know, they can, but it just all feels like stuff we know to dodge now in this sort of storytelling. And for its good nature, like, and general distrust of like encroaching Americans and, you know, the evil colonial white settlers and all that, like, which are not even, we don't even see them, but we just kind of know this is the end of this kind of way of life, right? So there's the romance of that.
Right.
That's fine.
The whole midsection of this movie is mostly about the threat of rival tribes.
Right. That stuff is way less interesting to me.
Well, and I think that was the thing that a lot of natives had like major complaints with, where it's like, you're just villainizing like a different tribe that in a way that is not
the Pawnee are one-dimensional in this,
right, and actually isn't historically reflective of the dynamic between.
I think it's also the Pawnee tribe now are like, the Sioux tribe is much larger and more politically significant and like well known, and you know, they're the sort of stars of this movie, and then we're just kind of like these secondary villains who like ride in and cause trouble. Like that's all we do in the movie.
Final 20 minutes of the movie, Charles Rocket shows up.
He sure does.
And is like, hey buddy, I just want to remind you you're white.
Yeah.
And he does his sort of like, I have turned my back on you kind of speech.
It's fucking Avatar. I mean,
totally. And then you think there's going to be some last stand thing where in certain ways I respect that they don't do it. And basically he's just like, I should leave. If I stay here, it's going to fuck up.
There's a small action sequence of him being taken as a prisoner and them rescuing him. But yes, there is not a big showdown. Instead, he's just like truly in hippie mode at this point where he's like, yeah, I've got feathers in my hair and I've got my like, you know, shawl wrapped around me and I'm fucking hanging out with everyone. Right.
Shows up looking like that.
And
it's like you went away to camp and all of a sudden you're wearing beads now.
It's a little bit like that. And he's like, it's time for me to go. And they're like, well, we love you, man.
Because they've already gotten married.
It's been really fun hanging this year.
Let's also say, Sam Withyfist's character.
Let's say it's not like him going to camp, okay? It's like a year abroad at college, okay?
Yeah.
Let's give him that.
Yeah. No,
I think
right.
he spends
a sort of
right. He spends a summer and winter with these guys.
Stan Withyfist's character.
Yes, Mary McDonnell.
Her family was slaughtered in front of her.
Correct.
As a child.
Yes, she was, you know, probably like a Swedish settler or whatever, you know, whatever.
Then she is adopted by the Sioux. Graham Greene and Tanu Cardinal, who basically the three of them are all the exact same age.
Tanu Cardinal looks amazing in this movie.
She looks amazing in
Love
this.
her.
And obviously, it's not like egregious because they're adoptive parents. It is just funny that they're all the same age.
Yeah, so
I think there's
Mary
a year
McDonnell
between the three of them.
I'll just go by now. She's 72 now. Graham Greene is 71 now. Tanu Cardinal is 73 now. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. They have raised her. She like has spent the majority of her life living amongst them. That is like her culture, right? It's not like Costner being like, I kind of like this. It is kind of weird that the end result of the movie is that like he's the outsider. He brings danger with him, basically. There's this question of like, are the settlers going to come for us eventually no matter what, right? Like, how long can we survive? But his big point is like, they now hate me. Right. They hate me. Like I'm top of the list because I'm a traitor to them.
Exactly. I'm a problem in a way that they don't want.
Whereas as long as I live amongst you, there's going to be a giant bullseye. And they're like, should we move to a different area? And he's like, don't fucking move. I'll just leave. By the way, I'm taking her with me. No, I'm not saying
we'll always whisper his name.
She doesn't have agency in that decision, but it does feel like kind of a weird ending to be like, well, obviously you have to leave your family.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, man. Go make Dances with Wolves 2. Answer these questions.
Blake wrote a second book.
He did. More Dances with More Wolves.
And Costner was like, I'll never fucking do a sequel.
Unless it's a part 2 to my American saga. Yeah. Yeah. The Buffalo Hunt's really good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked before, Griff, because there's so many shots in that sequence. I'm like, how did they do this?
Yeah,
they shot for 6 days.
That's awesome.
There was like one guy in the area who I think might have been the governor who had like the largest amount of buffalo. He talks about this in the fucking Timeline of My Career video.
This free range of, you know.
Yeah.
Now, and it's not the current governor of South Dakota who keeps shooting more animals to prove that she was right to shoot that first dog, right?
No, kind of the opposite of her. But he had this like the largest percentage of buffalo, and he had to keep on like pleading with him to let him shoot. And then they finally got it. And I think they just had like helicopters, multiple trucks with cameras attached to them. And the way they got this was they just kept fucking doing it. Like when you say, how'd they get so many shots? It was just 6 consecutive days of just doing the run over and over and over and over again and shooting each time with as many cameras as possible, having Kevin Reynolds help him, whatever it is. He said the first time he did it, they did the run. He was like so exhilarated and then looked back at the footage and none of the native actors had fired a single arrow. And they were like, we just don't do shit like this anymore. This is like wild that we were so overwhelmed by it that we weren't even thinking. Like, we lost sight of the point of the scene. And then he was like, you gotta fucking quiver, arrows, do shit.
We're shooting, man. It's a buffalo hunt.
Right. And then said, like, all the actors got very competitive then. So then every take after that was usable, and they just kept on getting pieces and pieces and pieces. And he kept on shooting. It was like, it was the most transcendent shit. It was like, you can feel the energy of it, that he was like, this is the magic of the fucking movie. I can't believe we're getting this. This is like so overwhelming in its reality. And then he was like, day 6, I like called for another reset to do another take. I think I'm not acting in that scene. He's like in the helicopter behind the camera, and they call action, and there's like a bull on the field, and the bull, none of the buffalo move. And then the bull like charges towards the helicopter and almost hits it, and they pull up, and he looks, and the buffalo are still. And he was like, that's like nature calling for a picture wrap. Like, he didn't frame it that way, but he was like, it was a moment where it was like, everyone was saying to me, like, you got enough? The buffalo gave you 6 days of filming.
Enough. Leave them alone.
Yeah.
Obviously, they like to run around, but nonetheless.
But like in unison, they all were just like, nope, we're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Costner, as he says in the dossier, he's like, more. If something's good, let's keep doing it. This is good. Let's keep doing it. Like that's what do you like? Why would we stop?
And in his Costner, like, everything has such great import way. He's like, that's a moment where nature was telling me you have to listen to the elements.
Shut up, Kevin.
Here's the thing. I want to like this movie. I don't come into this being like, well, obviously this is like the shitty film that shouldn't have won over Goodfellas. And I think if there's like a spectrum of like Ordinary People, Forrest Gump, Dances with Wolves, which often gets cited as 3 of the most extreme examples of like the wrong movie one, right?
Sure.
There was the cool movie that has aged incredibly well.
Right.
That lost to like the big sort of emotional whatever. We've done our Forrest Gump episode. That movie actually kind of like upsets me, and I just find it very like manipulative now. This movie doesn't like, I don't bump against it in the same way.
No,
versus Ordinary People, where I'm like, Ordinary People rules.
Ordinary People is very good. I don't think it's the best picture of 1980.
I don't either, but I think it's a cool Best Picture winner.
Yeah, sure. It's not cool. Let's not go crazy.
It is, because it's such a fucking modest, small,
I understand
bottled film.
I know what you're saying.
It's an interesting Best Picture winner. When you remove
but like
what
Elephant
it beat.
Man or Raging Bull would have also been interesting Best Picture winner.
When you remove what it beat. Yeah. I think this is kind of an absurd Best Picture winner.
But no, it isn't, because it made so much money. Like, if it wasn't a movie that was transformatively successful, then I would say like, they literally just gave it to this because they love fucking sucking movie stars' dicks.
They do.
But
which they
do. But this movie was such a gigantic hit. Like you said, what's above it? Ghost, which was also nominated for Best Picture, but is, God bless it, a stupid movie with rocks in its brains.
Yes.
And it's like fun, but Ghost is dumb.
They couldn't give it Best
Picture.
Quite
get there with Ghost.
Right. And Home Alone.
Phenomenon. And Home Alone, which
weirdly snubbed for Best Picture.
I love that movie.
They were trying to swing the Oscars down to it on a paint can, but they missed.
That would have been fun.
I agree. That would have been fun.
Can we crack into this Oscar year? Because there's a lot of fascinating shit happening in this year. I know we talked about it in our Hunt for Red October episode, because I was saying like, it feels like Hunt for Red October should have been nominated for Best Picture. I certainly think it's better than this film.
Well, it's better than 3 to 4 of the Best Picture nominees this year.
But there are also like movies with strong narratives where you're like, there was no way they weren't going to nominate that.
No, but the Best Picture nominees are Dances with Wolves, big hit. Ghost, big hit. Goodfellas, is critical hit. And a solid box office hit. The Godfather Part 3, which probably has no business being here, but the last 2 Godfathers won Best Picture.
And once again, in what world is it not going to get nominated?
It's probably going to make it in.
Right. It's kind of, yeah.
And then Awakenings, which is probably without a doubt, like the least remembered of these nominees.
But I like more than this film.
And it's a pretty well done, charming, like pretty okay movie.
It's like a kind of the best of the like Gentleman's Six, super earnest, prestige-y maudlin Oscar movies.
Yeah, and it's well acted.
It's well acted, yeah.
Now, like, if I'm picking Best Picture this year, and of course I'm assuming I'm not allowed to pick like King of New York or To Sleep with Anger or Close Up or like Nita, movies from this time that I love.
About movies that are in the conversation.
Right.
Right. I mean, Gremlins the New Batch should have won Best Picture.
Goodfellas, Miller's Crossing, Hunt for Red October for fucking sure.
Yeah.
Am I allowed Total Recall?
I don't think you are.
Am I allowed Wild at Heart?
I don't think you are.
Am I allowed Green Card?
I think you are.
And can I have Edward Scissorhands?
I don't think you are.
Can I have The Grifters?
Yes.
Got a great 5 there.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Misery, like that's a movie that obviously is an Oscar player but doesn't break through the top. Could have been.
It is interesting.
Postcards from the Edge is a really good movie this year.
The thought experiment of what you just did.
Yeah.
So many of the genre films from this year have not just
because Edward Scissorhands was a big movie. Obviously.
Yeah, it was a big hit.
Right, yeah.
But have not just aged the best, but almost now are seen as like the more important, 100%. Serious films.
Those are that's why the Oscars pissed away. So as much as I enjoy the Oscars, so much cultural relevance in the 90s by giving movies that were not zeitgeisty, but did pretty well and got good reviews, but like we're just doomed to be forgotten.
But is there a universe where like Best Picture is Dances with Wolves, Goodfellas, Godfather Part 3, Edward Scissorhands, Hunt for Red October, and it feels a little more whatever. Yeah.
Now, I feel like there's no actor. Did you want to do actor?
No, supporting actress is the one that I think is fascinating.
Let me just give you actor first.
Please.
Because Costner was nominated. He lost to Jeremy Irons for Reversal of Fortune. Jeremy Irons is great in Reversal of Fortune. I think it's this combo of he's like doing an accent. Irons has been around for a while. The movie is so fun and lurid. I don't know. They like the kind of villainy thing. That's why he wins.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, he gets up there and famously thanks David Cronenberg and is like, this is kind of the residual juice of people saying I should have won for Dead Ringers.
Kevin Costner is nominated for Dances with Wolves. De Niro is the pick for Awakenings over Williams. Makes sense. He's the one who's awakening.
Although I do think Williams is the better performance.
It's
but
the classic Rain Man thing of like the showier actors getting in there. Gerard Depardieu is getting in for Cyrano de Bergerac. I would say that's a double nomination for that and Green Card. Like he's sort of emerging.
Not Green Book.
No. I bet he likes Green Book though.
I guarantee you he loves Green Book.
He's good. I did no crimes. And then Richard Harris for The Field, the Jim Sheridan movie, which rocks, in which he plays the angriest old farmer in the fucking world. Kind of a forgotten movie, but Harris is like a legend. Yeah, so Harris, it's sort of like
yes.
Now, who are the Golden Globe nominees, Griff? I just wanted to, like who's on the outside of this, right?
Well, the Globes nominate Depp for Scissorhands for comedy.
Sure do.
Yeah.
They also nominate Richard Gere for Pretty Woman. They also nominate Patrick Swayze for Ghost.
Did they nominate Macaulay?
They also nominate Macaulay Culkin for Home Alone. So they nominate the stars of those big movies.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, like, congratulations, you were the big star of the big movie this year. And the Oscars are like, no, thank you.
Yes.
The Oscars also ignore Al Pacino in The Godfather Part 3, which is honestly an amazing performance.
Yeah.
He's so good in it.
It's the part of that movie. I mean,
they pull him back in. He says that line in that movie.
Yeah, I think his performance is a little undeniable.
He's really good in it, but I think they're just feeling stinky about it, and they actually nominate him in supporting for Dick Tracy, a subtler performance as Big Boy Caprice. Al Pacino.
It is very funny to think of this being, and obviously we just covered this recently, but like Pacino is 20 years into a career. He has still not won an Oscar. And they're like, we're not nominating for you for Godfather Part 3. And we're giving you this sort of pat on the back nom for Dick Tracy.
You put on a bunch of makeup. Good for you. Now, you wanted to talk about supporting actress. This is an incredible 5.
This is a year where what jumped out to me was, this is a year where arguably you could imagine every one of these nominees winning in a different year.
So Whoopi Goldberg wins for Ghost.
Yes.
It's a seismically funny comedy performance.
It's her second nomination.
It's in one of the biggest movies of the year. She was should have won for The Color Purple.
Yeah.
And I think they know it.
She's rapidly becoming one of the most famous people alive.
She's really famous. It's all happening. Whoopi Goldberg, you are the winner. Other nominees: Annette Bening for The Grifters, an incredible kind of
astonishing performance. Right.
Great performance.
The performance that basically starts the run of Annette Bening being overdue.
Sure. Lorraine Bracco in Goodfellas, in a lot of years, she could win. Like a really, really amazing, super like dramatic, big performance, lots of crying and yelling, another kind of star-making role. But they were like, go to the jungle. Maybe you can find me a medicine man.
Do you not feel like in lighter years, like
She could win.
either of those two probably would have beat Mercedes Rule and the Fisher King?
Sure. 100%. Let's keep it going.
No disrespect to Mercedes.
Let's keep it going. You've got Mary McDonnell in Dance with Wolves.
Yeah.
Who's
an
good.
excellent performance in the movie that wins Best Picture.
She's going to get another nomination, I think, the next year for Passion Fish.
Yes.
Right? It's Passion Fish?
For lead. Yeah.
You got Diane Ladd for Wild at Heart.
Which we will talk about
legend.
soon. Yes.
Acting alongside her daughter.
Yeah.
She's crazy performance. She's so good.
It's kind of wild they were cool enough to nominate that in a year where they're otherwise pretty conservative.
That's true. So it's a great 5.
Diane Ladd, the following year,
list.
just the emotional added punch of her working with Dern on Rambling Rose. That feels like that was had more juice to possibly be the career win. But like all 5 of those people that's an interesting category.
This fucking win Best Screenplay over Goodfellas. That's so crazy. The Goodfellas screenplay is so good.
So thoroughly in the tank for this.
Yeah.
Because it wins editing as well.
Well, I mean,
it doesn't win cinematography. No, it does win cinematography.
Of course it wins cinematography.
Yeah, of course.
It would be insane if it didn't win that. Which it's a gorgeous movie. If nothing else, it is a gorgeous looking movie. Dean Semler, who'd done a lot of, he did Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. He's an Australian guy. He did a couple Mad Max.
Yeah. Can we talk about the coolest thing that happens this year at the Oscars? Nick Park wins Best Animated Short Film for Creature Comforts.
Oh, Creature Comforts. So even before, right, Wallace.
Nope. Beating Nick Park for A Grand Day Out.
You know what? But that's what I don't like it. I think A Grand Day Out is better than Creature Comforts. And I think the Oscars fucked up. What do you think?
I disagree with that.
A Grand Day Out's my favorite. Well, it might be my favorite. It's not insane.
Close Shave is, or no, I'm sorry, wrong trousers.
Yeah, it's between those two, but the simplicity of Grand Day Out, him saying Wensleydale, just them being on the moon robot. I just love Grand Day Out so much. I love it.
But Bruno Bizzetto, who's like a legendary Italian animator, who did Allegro non troppo, which is like considered the Italian Fantasia. You and I talked about him recently when we did the Kim's video with ARP.
Yep.
He's the 3rd nominee. It's Nick Park twice against himself. He wins.
Pretty cool. He probably got up there and was like, "Oh, hello." And everyone was like, "This is what all English people are like."
Creature Comforts is incredibly well done.
It's very funny.
It's also just one of those things where you're like, Jesus Christ, what a fucking good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Nailed it.
It's a good concept.
Yes. It's like Drunk History where you're like, how did no one fucking think of this?
Gotta show those movies to my daughter.
You do.
She'll like Gromit. So Costner wins all the Oscars. The tapes come out. It's the most popular rental of all time.
That's the other thing. On video, it ends up doing better than Ghost. Like Ghost outgrossed it in theaters. Dances with Wolves remains big. They re-released the 4-hour cut 9 months later. It's already back in theaters making more money, longer version. People are like, give me all the fucking dances you got.
Boring. But that's the story of Dances with Wolves. 3 stars. It's okay. I don't know. C+, B-.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. Looks good.
It doesn't do it for me, but I also don't have very strong feelings against it. Here's a provocative question. Not to get ahead of next week's episode.
You gonna provoke me right now?
Yep.
All right.
The whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, do I like the Postman more than I like this movie?
Wow. I was like, you're not going to ask that question, are you? But you did. You asked that question. I think I like this film. I think this is a more functional film than The Postman.
No question.
And I like that it explores a little nuance in its storytelling, which I would say The Postman avoids.
I think there's nuance. Postman asks a very provocative question, which is, what if there were letters?
What if Tom Petty was the mayor of somewhere?
What if there was mail?
Ben, do you prefer The Postman? I liked talking about
Ben's about to physically kick me out of the studio. I mean, for even asking this question.
That's crazy. Yes. Yeah. That's crazy.
What do you think of this movie, Ben?
I had never seen it before.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I paused it a few times.
Yeah.
It's a pauser.
Yeah.
You know?
I might have split this movie in half. I might have had a Kit Kat approach to watching this film.
Made a sandwich, ate the sandwich, did a chore or two, came back to it.
I had about 8 hours of sleep in between acts of this film.
I mean, it's a really simple story.
Very simple. That is almost the thing, as much as it sort of bores me that I want to commend it for the most.
Yeah.
There's something interestingly understated for a movie that is dealing with incredibly simplistic, reductive sort of story themes.
Yeah.
It is just telling the behavioral version of that story.
Watching it now, it just didn't have maybe the same impact as it did when it came out in 1990, which like, duh, obvious. But I don't know. It just, to me, I was like, wow, this just feels like a really outdated film.
Yeah, it does. It feels old-fashioned in somewhat embarrassing ways. And then also in ways you're kind of like, sure, I get it. I get it. I get it.
Flatliners was nominated for Best Sound.
Flatliners has cool sound, probably.
Just the beeps? Truly, that's my first thought.
I don't remember. I haven't seen that movie since high school.
Best sound effects.
I would like to befriend a wolf.
Sure.
That's the takeaway for me.
I support you.
Yeah.
Even a coyote, which is a small wolf.
A coyote.
Chills with coyotes.
That's your name? You want that to be your nickname for this series? Chills with coyotes?
November 9th, 1990.
David's so frustrated that we've gone 1 hour and 49 minutes on Dances with Wolves.
Let's play the box office.
People are going to be so angry about this
actually,
episode.
I started us a little late, so actually we're at 2 hours.
Oh, really? Okay, great. Box office.
So we're doing great.
Let's go.
We're doing fine. November 9th, 1990. It's coming out limited release on 14 screens, making $42,000 a theater. Huge limited release.
What's its wide weekend?
Its wide weekend is next weekend. No, the weekend after next. Yes, the weekend after next.
And was it open to?
Then?
Yeah, the wide.
10 mil.
Oh, so.
But yeah, even then. But we're not. We're going to do this weekend because this weekend's interesting anyway. Number one at the box office is a horror sequel.
Is it a Freddy?
No.
Is it a Jason?
No.
Is it one of the canonical?
I would say yes. It's a canonical series, but a little off to the side or sillier.
It's not Texas Chainsaw 2, is it?
No. That's way early.
But does it have one of the icons of horror?
I would say so. You love this guy.
Chucky?
It's Child's Play 2?
Child's Play 2.
Wow. Yeah.
They call him.
They call him.
I don't know what they call him.
Yeah. This is my favorite one, too, as well.
Yeah, this is kind of the best one, right?
I strongly think so. Yeah.
What happens in this one?
I don't fucking remember. Chucky's in it. He's cutting a big Jack in the Box on.
He has like an older sister kind of like looking after him, and Chucky comes back and no one believes him.
3's pretty bad, right? Like people are kind of down on
the
3.
Military Academy one.
Right. And then of course Bride of Chucky is sort of like, oh, interesting. We're reinventing it. All that.
Yes. But this one
Chucky got lucky there. I don't know if you remember.
This one ends in the factory, right?
Yes.
Yes, which is the best set piece.
Cool.
Yeah.
But it's opening to a healthy $10 million. Yeah. Chucky, Child's Play 2. Doing well. Number 2 at the box office. A movie I do like a lot. A psychological horror film.
David's nodding profusely.
It's not amazing or anything, but it's kind of like an influential movie in a lot of ways.
In 1990, psychological horror. Influential. It's not Jacob's Ladder, is it? It's
Adrian Lyne's film, Jacob's Ladder.
Well, that's what it was.
Starring Tim Robbins. Now, sort of famous for its twist ending in general, but also for the effect of...
Have you ever seen it, Ben?
It's about this guy...
The twist is that it ends up being a shoot. He thought it was on a ladder and it's a shoot.
We both made not good jokes. And you know what? I think the audience is better for it.
We're united, you and I.
You know, it's about a Vietnam veteran
who going, and he's going.
Well, a little. Honestly, that is correct. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder? Have you seen Jacob's Ladder?
Yeah, I'm speaking in metaphors here, but I'm kind of right.
It's Adrian Lyne's big follow-up to Fatal Attraction. It's about this guy who thinks he's going crazy because he's seeing these crazy hallucinations.
Are you going to spoil Jacob's Ladder here on this podcast?
But when he's having these crazy dreams, it does have a famous twist ending, but. He sees these people like shaking their heads and they like accelerate the head movement and it looks like their heads are like vibrating. And that is just like becomes like all horror video games use that. It's like Silent Hill uses that. And like
the poster is just that and is very evocative.
It's so cool. It was like, it's like the movie itself is like a pretty good, spooky kind of, you know, clever, thinky horror movie. but it's got these little visual ideas in it. Where you're like, ooh, that's juicy. Number 3 at the box office. We talked about it a bunch.
Also, let's just
one of the biggest hits of the year.
Home Alone?
No, that's opening next week.
Is it Ghost?
Ghost.
Ghost has been out for a while at this point.
Ghost has been out for 18 weeks, my friend,
Wow.
and it's number 3 at the box.
They're gonna remake that, right?
Yeah,
That's just like that's destined to be.
That's a good call.
I think Channing has said he has the rights, which makes a lot of sense.
Sure does.
Now, he has also said, to his credit, that he has not gone through with it because they have not come up with a good enough take.
Sure. What if there was a ghost? Okay, came up with a take.
I do like Channing just kind of taking it off the board.
Sure. Good for you, Channing.
Either he has a take on it or just no one ever fucking does
If anyone out there really loves Ghost, I'm sorry for calling it a dumb movie with rocks in its head, but
it's a tremendous amount of fun.
It's fun. Yeah. It's a fun movie.
It's a deeply silly film.
Yeah. I like all the scary parts, but there's not much of that.
The thing I want to say about Ghost.
What? What do you want to say?
The thing that's cool about it is a movie that is like 12 genres at the same time.
Yeah,
to your point.
When it's doing like the ghosty stuff, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And when it's like a very, very treacly romance, it's mostly lame.
Sometimes
when
it's like a body swap comedy.
When it's a comedy, it's fun.
Yeah.
It is a wild movie for that reason. It's a wild movie. It's kind of set in like mild neighborhood. It's cool.
Oh, wow. Hey. David, what's next?
Number 4 at the box office is a comedy.
Okay.
Can't say I know this movie.
At all? Or you don't know it well?
I don't think I really know it at all. I mean, I know the director and I know the stars. And I guess it makes sense that this star, who is a sitcom actress, is in her phase of trying to become a movie star.
So it's a Shelley Long?
No, but you're close.
Is it a Kirstie Alley?
That's right.
There we go. So it's not a Look Who's Talking.
No.
I feel like I was just digging into Kirstie Alley's movie
from
career.
a legendary comedy director. Not a guy who always made great movies.
It's not a Blake Edwards, is it?
No.
But I'm in the sort of right zone.
Sure. Sort of an old hand. Recently died.
We
lost him only in 2020.
We lost him only
at the grand old age of 98.
It was not Stanley Donen.
No. He didn't live that long, did he?
He lived really fucking long. Stanley Donen?
Okay, well, who is it?
I think he lived to like 100. Who is it? It's a legendary comedy director who died in 2020. Made a movie with Kirstie Alley.
Bill Pullman's in this film. Carrie Fisher. Sam Elliott.
Who are the top two?
I just named them.
Well, I'm saying, is it a Kirstie Alley, Bill Pullman vehicle?
No, Kirstie Alley vehicle.
It's a Kirstie Alley vehicle first and foremost.
Bill Pullman, Carrie Fisher, Jamie Gertz, Scott Bakula, Francis Sternhagen, John Randolph, Paul Benedict, Sam Elliott, Ed O'Neill.
The fuck is this movie?
Here's the tagline.
Yeah, give it to me.
Wait, let me find the full tagline.
Oh, boy.
I feel like it'll help.
Okay.
It definitely won't help. The full tagline is, of course, she did it, and boy, is she sorry.
Is it like a murder comedy?
I guess so. I don't know anything about it. It was directed by Carl Reiner. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, weird. Well, it's not Fatal Instinct. No. What is it?
Sibling rivalry.
No fucking
Never heard of this movie.
idea. Never heard of this.
It made $17 million at the box office. So
that's wild. Okay.
Why don't you
fuck
chew
off
on that?
I will.
Number 5 at the box office wins Best Actor this year. We were just talking about it.
It's called Reversal of Fortune.
Have you seen it?
Yeah, I watched it for the legal
what
draft.
Is it called?
Reversal of Fortune.
It's a good movie. Klaus von Bülow. It's pretty good. He killed his wife, or did he? You've also got. We've talked about it.
You like that movie, right?
I like it. It's fun. It's fun, like, sort of see me thriller. I like it. You've also got the erotic drama White Palace, starring 2 of our horniest actors, Susan Sarandon and James Spader. You've got.
You weren't being facetious there. Those are 2
That's
of
what I'm
our
saying. Like, it was one of those things where it's like these 2 are in a movie together. I'm like, do they fuck? And it's like, that's all they do, man. Yeah. You've got Quigley Down Under, one of the forgotten westerns of the early 90s, starring Tom Selleck and Laura San Giacomo.
Movie always feels a little to me like Selleck being like, I'll do like an Indiana Jones type thing. Finally,
like
I'll come back
around
to
Australia. Like,
right.
I don't know. He's like a cowboy who has to go to Australia.
But that's his belated adventure film after not doing.
You've got the war film Memphis Belle, which is about the bombers in the Second World War flying the B-17 bomber.
Michael Keaton Jones,
Matthew Modine, Eric
Stoltz, Aston, Connick Jr.
Young faces of
Let's
Hollywood.
go.
It's not a big hit, I don't think.
The youngest.
Yeah, the youngest of them all. This guy's too tall to get in this fucking plane.
Let me fly the plane.
You've got Marked for Death, which I think is one of the less well-regarded early Seagal films. It's the one with, it's got like some sort of voodoo villain. My guess is that doesn't go completely.
Talk about a movie that's probably aged perfectly.
And you have a re-release of Fantasia. Those are the top 10 films. When Dances with Wolves opens at number 11. But yes, the week after this, Home Alone comes out. And the week after that, Dances with Wolves expands and begins a great box office run. So that's the start of our miniseries on Kevin Costner.
Look,
I said, 3 stars, C-, C+, whatever.
Yeah, 2 wild movies coming up.
Yeah.
One of the most fascinating follies I feel like we've covered in a while. Although we did just do a Martin Brest series. And then like a secret masterpiece. I guess not as secret anymore.
Open Range, I do think it's less secret, but I do still think like it's a movie more people should see and talk about. And yeah, we have so much fun talking about The Postman next week with Emily St. James. I'll reveal it.
Yeah, reveal it.
Fuck, should we reveal the Open Range guest? You guys have all been baying for it.
No, don't say anything else. Or
but yes,
say it. I don't fucking.
No, don't say it.
Well, we don't say it on the Postman episode.
Good,
I just know
great,
that. Good, fine,
fuck good. You. Fuck you.
Try and
you know
guess.
What? Yeah, try and guess.
I don't know if you folks have noticed. This episode is marking maybe the first appearance of Summer David.
I think we're gonna have to run that AC, guys. I'm debuting this notion.
Summer David.
It's gonna have to go.
Hot in here
I'm sweating.
You're sweating?
Yes, come touch it if you don't believe me.
I don't believe it.
All right, good. All right.
Okay, so while
we're doubling down here.
While Ben's ripped off,
he's getting a paper towel.
He's ripped off a sheet of paper towel.
He's dabbing at me.
Would you say it's wet or damp?
I'm gonna have to say it's damp.
Yeah, it's damp. It's not pouring. I'm not like an airplane. I'm not. What's his pants? An airplane.
Robert Hayes.
Yeah, I always think about that.
We could do a Zucker series.
But we'd have to do sort of the tendrils of Zucker, and then it's like there's the one who goes all right wing, right? Like it's, you got to deal with how they.
That's the problem.
How they separate.
Because there's the zazz of it all, but like we could not cover Jane Austen's Mafia.
Well, Ben definitely could. It would be like so it would be okay.
If it's just the ones that the 3 of them did together.
So do we do Kentucky Fried Movie? It's a Landis, obviously. But do we do it just as our part of our Patreon. Fuck you, Landis?
Yeah, okay. I feel like Landis we punt only to Patreon.
So it's Airplane, Top Secret, Ruthless People.
Yeah,
we're having a good time.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it's Jim Abrahams makes Big Business. So we do that. David Zucker does Naked Gun. We do that.
Yeah.
Jerry Zucker does Ghost. So we do that.
Yeah.
Jim Abrahams makes Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael with Winona Ryder. Did we do that? Yeah. Okay. Back to David Zucker does Naked Gun 2.5. The Smell of Fear.
We're still
right
in the money.
Okay. We're still doing that.
Yep.
Right?
First Night?
No. Then Jim Abrahams does Hot Shots. We got to do that.
We got to do that.
Then Jim Abrahams does Hot Shots Part 2.
You're describing the best miniseries
this sounds pretty good,
of all time.
All right. And then I guess actually none of them directed Naked Gun 33.5. So we
do that on Patreon
or something. Then Jerry does
Peter Siegel, I think.
Yes, that's right. First Night, the Arthurian movie. Yeah. Okay.
We're still cooking with gas.
Oh, I forgot to mention Ghost, of course, comes between.
You said Ghost.
Oh, I did?
Ghost. Yeah.
I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
So sweaty. Okay, then Abrahams made a movie. Oh, it's a made-for-TV movie. Forget it.
What was it?
First Do No Harm. It's like Meryl Streep.
Doesn't fucking count.
But then Jim Abrahams made Jane Austen's Mafia.
Yep.
Gotta do that. Then David Zucker did Basketball.
Yeah.
Probably gotta do that one.
Yeah.
I'm nodding.
Jerry Zucker did Rat Race.
Yeah.
Gotta do that. Wow, they really do. Okay, then the end is a little tough.
How
sliding.
many fucking movies is this?
So now 2 scary movies.
Yeah, the thing, now the other 2 have retired. David remains, the right-wing one, and he does My Boss's Daughter.
Oh, that one's
with Kutcher and Tara Reid.
Rough as hell.
And then Scary Movies 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one, An American Carol.
But that's the last one.
Which is the one where it's like Michael Moore plus Christmas Carol or whatever. Yeah.
I think and like Trace Adkins plays like George Washington or some shit. I think
John Voight plays George Washington, my friend.
Trace Adkins plays maybe just angry American.
Let's see. I'll tell you. Yes, he plays the Angel of Death.
There we go.
And I'll tell you, Kelsey Grammer plays George Patton.
Great. I think what you just described is a clean 15.
I mean, it would be pretty good.
Good and smooth. Maybe we'll put it on bracket at some point.
Yeah. Leslie Nielsen plays Osama bin Nielsen. What's going on there? What's happening there? What's the answer to that?
I guess we got to do it.
Now we got to do it.
I just Googled Osama bin Nielsen, and now I think I'm on a watch list. Yeah. That was truly in the era of like, Republicans can do comedy too. See?
That was their first stand of the like, Republicans are learning humor
Jon
and the left
Stewart
is terrifying.
Yeah, Jon Stewart is the only one making jokes.
Yeah.
What was the show? Fuck, what was it called? It was like the Fox News show.
Oh, fuck.
I can't remember what it was.
It wasn't called This Hour Has... No.
22 Minutes?
No, that's a different thing,
Yeah,
right?
it's a different thing. But it had some kind of name. That's a Canadian thing.
Right. What?
I can't remember.
God, yes.
I just remember how bad it was, and it was like, hell yeah, this rocks. This is the worst shit ever. Whatever. Anyway, everything's fine now. We're doing
you guys
great.
Don't like Gutfield?
That guy's funny.
He's
Gutfield.
so funny.
Guffield's incredible.
The half-hour news hour. There you go. That's what it was called.
Okay, so I wasn't
It was something like we both knew it was something with time.
Yes.
Who's the host?
The host, of course, was Kurt Long. I don't fucking know, man. I don't know. I just remember it started with like Rush Limbaugh as the president being like, I'm the president. And the audience
Wait,
was like,
saying here Dennis Miller was a regular contributor.
Get out of here, babe. What are you talking about? That's the kind of humor people had when Dances with Wolves came out. That's why Dances with Wolves is such a big hit.
Regular contributor. Dennis was contributing as much as Peter North at a sperm bank, babe. I don't know. It's hard to riff a Dennis Miller joke in real time.
How did people
years
like
of
that?
success? No one was funny.
It was insane. He just said a bunch of stuff.
It was insane. He even himself, there's a really interesting interview with him where he's like, I don't even think what I do is that funny. I'm not a good joke writer. I basically just have like fast recall and a deep filing system is how he described his approach to joke writing. He's like, I just have a lot of files with references and I'm quick at pulling them out. Anyway, next week we're talking about The Postman.
Yep.
A movie about the mail.
Really fun ep.
Yeah.
You're Tom Petty in the mail.
Tom Petty in the mail. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. David's giving a thumbs up to the clock.
It looks good.
Thank you to Marie Bar. Thank you to Marie Barty for helping to produce the show. Thank you to AJ McKeon for our editing. AJ McKeon is also our production coordinator. Thank you to JJ Birch for our research. Lane Montgomery and the Great American Novel for our theme song. Pat Reynolds and Joe Bowen for our artwork. You can go to blankcheckpod.com for links to some real nerdy shit, including our Patreon, Blank Check Special Features, where we do commentaries on film series. And we are rounding out the total, starting the board games, tabletops.
Let's see. This episode's coming out July 21st. So we are about to talk about, on this very day, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem.
We're closing it out with a movie that, spoiler,
Good.
Ben liked quite a bit.
Is good.
Give me a major smile.
But also Waterworld will be coming on that feed.
Yes, on August 11th, we will talk Waterworld.
Yes. One of the wettest fucking movies ever made, Ben.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And as always, Ben chills with coyotes.